Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call a meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. Introducing the panel members, to my left is Mr. Mark Areski, and to his left is Mr. Ron Stenning. Representing the City of Winnipeg from the Assessment Department is Michael Taylor, and our recording secretary is Belen Rojo. We'll be hearing applications for revision in regards to the assessment role. According to the Municipal Assessment Act, the matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant and the assessor make at this hearing are sworn in testimony, and anybody speaking on these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of other properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respects to the application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respects to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant. Following the swearing in, we'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then will be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after the application has been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and will make our decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We'll ask our secretary to swear in Mr. Taylor and to swear in the applicants, or affirm them.
Please state your full name.
Mike Taylor.
And you swear to give and to represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Do you swear in? I swear in you. Please state your full name. Diane Schimmelman. And you swear to give and to represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name.
Justin Zarnowski.
And you swear to give and to represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name.
Alexander Eckman.
And you swear to give and to represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed with the docket. So we're going to go to Roblin Boulevard, 3505. Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So file number 19-1994 for roll number 01001-358100 is 3505 Roblin Boulevard. The proposed 2020 reassessment value is $6,273,000. One building on site here built in 1976. Wall height of 14 feet. We're using a leasable area of 34,409 square feet, which is just shy of the gross and plan areas for the site, and land to building ratio here of 4.28 to 1. Flipping to my page 2 of my brief here. You can see at the top, the income and expense questionnaire information is reported. Years 2015 through 2017, we can see that they've experienced some vacancy throughout, almost 10.5 to a low of 7.25 recently. And then net operating incomes ranging right around $380,000. Subject property leases are detailed below on page 2. Again, they range from a low of $0 a square foot up to $17.50 a square foot. I'm not sure why that one isn't coming through. Page 3 just has some rental comparables similar to the subject. In the surrounding area on Grant Avenue, Corden Avenue, Roblin Boulevard, they range from $11 a square foot to $23. Again, similar in retail, commercial nature, size, and in vintage to the subject property. Page 4 here shows the income valuation calculation. So we see there, we have a basement space which we've applied a nominal rent of $2.79 a square foot. I did not get a chance to inspect that space, but have been to the site and have visited some of the other units on site. The other units range in rent from $10.35 a square foot up to $20.77 a square foot. We applied standard modeled rates for neighborhood shopping center, which would be a 4% vacancy collection loss. Short dollars at $8 a square foot and unrecovered expenses at 2%. Similarly, a cap rate of 7.3%, which you can see over on page 5 is at the 80th percentile for City of Winnipeg reassessment cap rates for neighborhood shopping centers. I'd ask the panel to turn back to page 4. It would be my recommendation today, based on vacancy of the site and configuration that we'll get into later, that we'd apply a vacancy rate of 13% for the subject property. Effectively,
Do you have figures, Mr. Taylor?
yeah, so effectively we use a 13% vacancy rate on this property. It brings the net operating income right in the wheelhouse of what the owner is actually receiving. The NOI ends up being $389,209.
389,
209.
209.
And then capped at that 7.3%, it brings the value to $5,332,000.
Sorry, one more time.
5,332. And again, I'm applying that based on, if you're looking at my page 8 of my evidence here.
So that is a revised figure for the subject property?
That's correct. And yeah, just my justification, Mr. Chairman, page 8 of my evidence there, you'll see the site plan for the subject property. I've looked at throughout the years of the income expense reported, as I was stating there before. The corner unit here that doesn't really have too much frontage and that's been chronically kind of vacant, so I'm just recognizing the vacancy inherent in that unit.
Ms. Schindelman, are you in agreement, or are you still going to proceed?
We like the 13%, but we're still going to proceed because we need a little bit more.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, are you finished with your presentation?
I am.
All right. Questions of the assessor?
Sure, I also have some rebuttal on his brief.
Okay, do the questions first, and then we'll deal with the rebuttal.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Page 2. Can you tell me this column called expenses, what does that refer to at the top of page 2?
It refers to the expenses reported. Sorry, I don't have these income expense questionnaires located in my document here today, so yeah, it's their expenses reported that are not recovered by the owner.
Okay. Would those expenses be more than the 2% that you've indicated on your workout?
Sometimes they do. There are expenses above and beyond the vacancy and shortfall that you would also see in the other column.
Right, so they'd be actually much more than 2%, it looks like.
Yep.
On page 3, would you say that 3,900 grant is similar to the subject?
It's much bigger than the subject.
Is it grocery anchored?
Yep.
Is there a Tim Hortons?
Yep.
And a Boston Pizza?
Yep.
And Shoppers?
Would there be any similar tenants at the subject?
There's some similar tenants, I mean, it's all retail.
Would
It's a
some of
much
those-
larger place, if that's your point.
No, that's not my point. Would some of those other tenants drive up the rents of maybe the more similar tenants?
Sure.
Sure, grocery anchored, shoppers, all those things.
Yep.
McDonald's, they drive up the rents. How about 2025 Corton, same thing?
Yeah, same thing.
Some of those bigger stores, Safeway,
Yep.
drive up the rents, okay. Do you have any comps for the interior office space at the subject?
No.
Do you know that the subject is a renovated grocery store? It used to be a grocery store?
Yeah, we dealt with this one last time.
Right, so it's not, it wasn't built as a
Mhm.
shopping center, and some of the frontage might not be, or the bays are deeper than a regular,
Yep.
probably some of your comps.
The bays being loading bays?
No, the depth of these spaces.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it's a reconfigured grocery store.
Right.
Yeah.
In your brief on page 4, beside the space the third from the bottom, 3547,
Mhm.
it says restaurant chain freestanding is the tenant class.
Yep.
Is that in fact the rent that's what you picked for that space? It's,
That was what was chosen.
Yeah.
So it's based on a freestanding restaurant?
Sorry, Diane asking the question?
yeah.
We both can, right?
Yes.
Is it, yeah, is it
Yep.
based on a freestanding restaurant, that right?
Is that, it would be modeled as if it was, but it can also be adjusted for what's currently there.
Okay.
So what is that space? You've got the, if you look at the site plan on page 8, where's the freestanding restaurant that you guys
Well,
modeled?
again, we dealt with this property last cycle, and it was incorrectly modeled last cycle as well. When it was reviewed, I don't feel that that's the Boston Pizza office space. Again, I don't have comps for suburban office space, but
Do you think 2077 is the right amount for that back office space?
again, I don't have comps here for suburban office space.
So it was incorrect last time and you guys didn't fix it?
Correct.
So you guys use you said the 7.3% cap rate, which is based on the 80th percentile?
Correct.
And then you included in your brief, what you call, I guess, non-comparable cap rates here. And really, this comment will apply throughout our, anytime we're speaking to cap rate. Why did, to any of the hearings today. What was the purpose of including these 5 retail sale comps?
Are you talking about on page 14?
I have.
These are included in as addendum to every city of Winnipeg.
So you're not intending to rely on them, you just have to include them?
They're there for information, yep.
But what information are you trying to provide?
The retail cap rates are ranging from those and the ones we've included.
So I imagine if you're intending on providing it for information, you guys looked at these deals and thought, these properties were purchased on the basis of a income that was then capitalized?
Correct. You're asking me how these relate to the subject?
No, I'm asking you why these are in here at all.
They're in all our briefs.
But, so when you include, right, you're saying these are demonstrative cap rates, like that's why you're including them?
Sure.
So did you look into any of the details of any of these purchases?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, could you maybe walk us through any, which ones did you look into?
I looked at the calculations that were done on these. I wasn't the one who has selected these properties to be included.
So would it surprise you to know that any of these were part of either portfolio sales or repositionings and wouldn't have been bought on a sort of cap rate?
I'm not sure, Justin. Lots of the time, the city doesn't have the same information that you guys know.
Fair. But, I mean, it's your brief, not ours, right? You picked those five.
I
Or-
personally did not.
The assessor picked those five,
Yeah.
like the assessment department.
One final question. The little basement space, for what it's worth, 504 feet, you had mentioned you didn't see it. We have never seen it either, so
Like, we don't think it exists.
I'm not sure where this would have come from. And I'm just curious, if you've never seen it and we've never seen it, where would this come from?
Where would it come from? Just from historical records on the site.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe when it was a grocery store, there's a basement, but. I don't know.
Yeah, most grocery stores have mezzanines too, so it might have been the mezzanine space. Again, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So just in summary, I just want to confirm your comparable rents probably would be higher than maybe would be at this type of property.
Some of them, yeah.
And the expenses that you quote, that you were using from page 2 are higher than the 2% you've allowed. Correct?
Sure.
That's fine, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Boraski?
Just 1 second, please.
Okay.
Did you calculate a blended rate for your rent?
No, I did not.
Some of these leases on page 2 are long-term leases, 25, 20, 23, 25, 19. Are those lengths of lease typical for strip malls like this?
Not like the subject, no.
So the subject is unusual in having these very long-term?
In the long-term leases, I would say yes.
And what impact does that have on the value?
What impact would that have on the value of long-term leases? It might lead to non-market leases. You'd see the same thing in anchors, you know, like your Hudson Bay company having a $1 rent for their space on a mall. Similarly, if you have a long-term lease like this, that's not, it's not a 5 year. 5 years is typical, right, for the market. So sometimes you get these longer-term leases, they're not market rents.
Non-market rents, I see. Going to page 14 and those cap rates that are listed there, which would be similar to the cap rate that would be applied to this property?
I would say none of them, really. Yeah, none of those are, reconfigured over grocery store into a strip mall.
Okay, that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Taylor, because we're going to be doing some calculations, do you have figures for your revised figure that we can take?
Figures.
Meaning that, you know, when you went from 4 to 13%, can you give me the figures?
As they calculate, I don't even have a calculator. I don't know if Mr. Stenning can lend me one of his too.
Okay, we can borrow.
Yeah, you can have that one, because I have my own.
You know, I know you got down to the NOI, but.
To be honest, Mr. Chairman, that's basically what I was looking at.
I'm sorry?
I understand there's issues with the modeled rents and them not.
Okay, then that's fine.
That's
just
more what I
thought-
was looking at, was getting towards that
Okay.
final NOI.
Yes,
I know
okay,
that the applicant has issues with the 2% unrecovered expense as well.
yes.
But again, it's getting to an NOI that is,
Okay,
the same as what they reported.
That's fine, we can calculate it probably later. There is, I might as well bring it up.
Okay?
And there is no calculation in your brief in regards to recoverable expenses. So normally, you would be having a 5% management non-recoverable expense in here, and it is not here. You've gone to a 2%, I think.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, this is a 2020 reassessment. In previous reassessments, we've included a management expense. That's not the case for this reassessment.
Okay,
And again, we're talking about assessments from
okay, good.
cycles ago. Yeah, and again, I'm not sure if you, I think somebody, maybe it was Mr. Bresky was asking about the strip and the configuration of the building as a strip mall. We're valuing it as a neighborhood shopping center instead of a strip mall. Strip malls usually will have lower capitalization rates and lower vacancy, but this one with their longer term leases, the configuration is kind of all
So-
over the place.
So your brief is basically all model driven?
It's all model driven, and I'm trying to recognize that weird unit in the back, and then some of the rental figures that the applicant's unhappy with using that higher vacancy than actually what's reported, to reconcile to an NOI that's
Yeah.
more actual.
All right, I think that about does it for my questions. I think, Ms. Schindlerman, you had a rebuttal
Yes.
in regards to,
Thank you.
and what are you rebutting?
Mostly the comparables.
Okay, so just give us maybe about a minute to look through this, okay? Then you can, there's little figures in here, okay, so you can lead us through this then?
Okay, yes. The rebuttal is, like I said, showing the difference between the comparables used, which would lead to a higher rent than is at the existing subjects shopping center. So again, it's just a photographic of what I already mentioned. So the 3,900 grant has the Safeway, Shoppers, the Tim's, the Boston Pizza, McDonald's, a Liquor Mart, and Bank, and those are all like anchor tenants, and anchor tenants will bring other tenants and drive up the rents. Page 3, 2025 quarter, the same idea. Safeway, Shoppers, Starbucks, and a gas kiosk, again, are all anchor type tenants which will drive up rents and make leasing easier at that type of mall, so less vacancy, less long-term vacancies and that sort of thing, which is not the case in the subject. Similar, 4910 Robin has a bank and a library, and 3619 Portage Avenue is actually the old Unicity that was redeveloped into all the new big box stores, and so there's Canadian Tire, Sobeys, Walmart, and many other, which I actually have a picture and another rebuttal later on, showing how this is not, these other, the comparables aren't comparable at all, is what I'm trying to explain. 3505 Roblin on page 5 is the subject, so we have nothing like that, no grocery, no liquor stores, no banks, nothing like that. And page 5 at the bottom shows the Boston Pizza office. It's not a freestanding restaurant. And it has no frontage, it's interior, and it's actually not that great office space. Page 6, 7, and 8 are income statements for, that were submitted to the city. And it's just showing the recoveries and the expenses and how the difference is the non-recoverable portion. I'm not sure if this is on yours or not, no it isn't. So on page 6, the expenses are $314,000, and if I take away the leasing and marketing, because the city's not recognizing that as a operating expense, and I deduct the recoveries from the tenants of $235,000, I get $76,000 of non-recoverable for 2015. If I do the same for 2016, ignoring the leasing and marketing of $29,000, which is a legitimate operating expense, especially at this mall where we're constantly re-leasing, we get $20,000 shortfall. And for 2017, the same thing. If we deduct the recoveries from the expenses, we get $46,000. And all of these are much higher than the 2% that we're allowed. And that's my rebuttal.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions?
Yeah, just on your comment there, you said you're constantly releasing the space, but half your tenants go back into the 90s. You've been there?
Right, but you recognize all that vacancy. We're constantly, those spaces are the ones that we've always had trouble with.
The one on the back?
The one in the back.
My other question again is on your, I guess your page 8 of the rebuttal. So, and getting to the chairman's question about management fees, they're recovered throughout the years, correct? They're listed as a recoverable expense.
Yeah, there's some of them are recovered, not everybody pays, like Aqua Pleasure Pool is a gross lease, so they don't pay management, and some of the other spaces don't pay full management fees.
So have you included any of that below in the unrecovered expenses
No,
items?
But if you look, the recoverable expenses are $270,000 and the recoveries are $252, right? So by just basic math, we got a little over $17,000 in non-recoverable
but we also have some repairs and maintenance as well.
in the non-recoverable. But I'm just saying what we list as recoverable expenses aren't all recovered.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just asking why it wasn't listed below in unrecovered expenses,
Oh,
to
because
balance it out.
we can't go and separate every dollar that's not recovered. We have expenses that are considered recoverable, but if they're not recoverable, they're not, if we don't recover them, we don't move them down to non-recoverable.
They're generally recoverable, but if we have a specific arrangement with the tenant, we still include them in recoverable expenses, and then they don't find their way to the recoveries.
It's just misleading in that we don't know exactly how much is not recovered is what I'm saying. I understand there's basic math you could use to figure it out, but we still don't know what that's not recovered is management or what that's not recovered is R&M.
Well, what difference does it make? It's not recovered. I'm just curious.
You guys had questions about management expenses and the chairman had questions about management expenses.
Okay.
So that was my question.
Oh,
Yeah. That's it for my questions, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Mr. Reski?
Yeah, this is really a very simple question. The non-recoverable expenses are expenses that are not recovered through the terms of the lease and are not in the rent. So what is the source of income that covers those expenses then? Presumably you can't always go without recovering all of your expenses by one means or another.
So the tenant's perspective would be that some of those costs, structural repairs would be included in their basic rent, like minimum rent. And so strictly speaking, on a property basis, the minimum rent would then have to subsidize those non-recoverables. And then that's how you get to the net cash flow for the property.
So they are actually recovered through the rent.
Well, we wouldn't call them recovered, like the
no,
minimum.
it's referring to like a triple net lease.
Mhm.
So then it becomes no longer a triple net lease, or a triple net situation.
As soon as you're dipping into the minimum basic rent revenue, that's what we would call non-recoverable.
And what, is that what happens at this property?
Yes.
That is how those rents are recovered, or sorry, those expenses
Yes.
are actually
Yes, of
recovered?
course. Yeah.
So it's,
So it's taking away from some of the minimum rent. So then it's no longer a triple net lease.
Because, yeah, when you're using, on evaluation, you're using market rents, and those market rents are based on the assumption of a triple net lease. So either you have to account for, and the way we do it, is accounting for it by including, the expenses shortfall, things like that. If we were getting below market rents and then no reasonable expense ratio, then we could live with that too. But the way we've dealt with non-recoverables is to include an adjustment in the expenses as part of the valuation, but still using market rents.
And then that, if this was an appraisal and you were accounting for the actual amount of non-recoverable rents, that would be driving down the value of the property. Because you're essentially saying to a potential investor that we have all of these relatively high non-recoverable expenses.
The income stream that you're ultimately gonna capitalize isn't the minimum rent you're collecting, it's the minimum rent minus the non-recoverables.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
No, I think that it's covered there. I'm fine. I have no other questions.
All right. Ms. Schindlerman, your presentation.
Thank you. Page 1, you can see the configuration of the shopping center. Like we said, it was an old grocery store renovated. And so that leads to unusual shaped spaces, hallways. You can see sort of by that yellow 12, 15 square foot, there's a hallway, and then there's a hallway going horizontally behind the front space there. So this is not like a constructed mall where it's nicely, space. It's sort of a mishmash, actually, is what it is. You can see the space that we've talked about before that has a little tiny door at the front on the left of the site plan, and the majority of it is at the back of the shopping center, and actually, there's a door at the back, and I believe that's usually how the people were getting into that space. That is really difficult to lease. We've had, it became vacant, it was leased, they didn't pay rent, and it was vacant again, and it's really gonna be hard to lease. The two office spaces, you can see, have no frontage, and they're along a hallway, and you have to go into a common area to get to them, so they don't have windows. The back office has actually a few windows along the back, but it is along the back. And you can see when I was talking about the deep bays, you can see the next space beside the 1,215 square foot space that says retail on it. It is long and narrow and deep, and is really not a desirable space. That's probably why it's a gross lease there. It's aqua pleasure pools. They sell pool chemicals and supplies and that sort of thing. So it's almost like an industrial space. It's not really so retail with that tiny little frontage. So it's basically it's a functionally obsolete type of property, but it is what it is, and that's what drives the rents down and drives the vacancy up at the shopping center. Page 2, you can see that the 2018 assessment was $4,788,000, and 2 years later, the new assessment by the assessment department is 31% higher. So in 2 years, they felt that the shopping center increased by 31%, when in fact, what happened in those 2 years is this big 7,000 square foot space was vacant. And that is the difference between the 2 years. On page 2, our market income valuation uses actual rents at the shopping center. 35% of the leases are fairly current, 2016, 2014. And so we felt that the actual rents are market. The other leases that were referred to on page 2 in the assessor's brief, those were 25-year leases. Those are tenants that may have been there for that long, but they've had renewals in between. So it's not like the lease was 25 years ago written into and the rents were into. There's been a renewal all along that were at market rates. So for example, on page 2 of the assessor's brief, the Lowry Insurance and the Roblin, they've been there for some time, but they've had renewals all the way along. Same with, well, actually, same with Boston Pizza, Pesci, and I don't know that Aqua Pleasure Pools rent has ever gone up, but that's the situation there too. But you can see that on the assessor's brief on page 2, that the PrEP and the daycare, the Autism Learning Center, and the Salvation Army are all fairly current leases, and they are the bigger spaces in the mall. So we have used the actual rents for the market workup. We've used a 9% vacancy, which is about the average of what it's been and what it always is at this property. We've used the $8 shortfall, and we've used recoverables, non-recoverables of 5% and the 2% other, which was usually for structural, which again is about the amount we need to match what we've experienced at this property. And because of all the issues, we've used the 8% cap rate, and we've come to a value of $4,196,000. That's a little bit lower than 2 years ago, and that's, like I said, because of that huge vacancy in the front, which we know from experience is going to be extremely difficult to lease to a viable tenant. Page 4 has our comparables, which are certainly supporting the actual rents, and maybe they're even a little bit lower. These are similar type tenants. And you can see we actually include the subject tenant because it was a 2018 lease, actually, 1075. We have other tenants on other spaces on Roblin, which are all very similar, little, just not grocery stores or liquor marts and that sort of thing. And we have some Dollarama rents as comparables for Salvation Army, and we have a Salvation Army on Portage Avenue as a comparable rent. Vacancy for the last 4 years has been, like I said, very high, and that is typical for this property. It's been 7.24% all the way up to 10.45%. The actual vacancy right now is much higher with the large space. We went over the non-recoverable analysis, and you can see on page 6 the actual percentages of the non-recoverables are 17% in 2015, 6% in 2016, and 12% in 2017. And we've used the 5 and 2 that has been typical for the last number of years. The cap rate, we've adjusted the cap rate, like I said before, just to mitigate some of the risk of this type of property. It's always had high vacancy, rents aren't so high, and it's functionally obsolete. We have a one large vacancy, and that's always been the situation with this property, with that back space.
And the challenge with the cap rate in terms of even, where to slot this property, you call it a neighborhood shopping center, and probably it was at one point. We're treating it now a lot more like an office tenancy, but really it's neither. It's whoever we can get to go in there. We have Remax, which is an office use. We've got the Autism, we've got the Boston Pizza, and even Lowry Insurance is almost office. So in terms of, it's not really a neighborhood shopping center at all. But then it's also not a suburban office building because it's not purpose-built office. And so we're sort of putting a square peg in a round hole in terms of saying, oh, well, since it's a neighborhood shopping center, the 80th percentile should be, 7.3. Really, it doesn't fit any of those classifications. It's one of these old grocery stores that we're putting whoever is willing to go in there in, and it really isn't retail or office. And so, to even reference that, the cap rate table for a property like this is a real challenge. So, we do think that 8% is fair, because, you know, saying it's any of those is not realistic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Couple questions. So page 2, your brief with your rent workup. A couple things, you guys use $9.50 for the vacant space.
Yes.
Based on your comparables, or based on configuration, or based on what?
Sort of all of those things, and,
That's what you're saying is market rent for that space.
sorry.
That's what you guys are saying is market rent for that space.
Right, I mean, certainly our comparables range from, $8.33 up to $13, and the $8.33 is for a much smaller space. Dollaramas are leasing for $10. They have frontage and all that sort of thing, so I would say that the maximum we could hope to get for this space would be around $9.50, yeah.
And that's again based on the frontage, because you're getting $12.94 for another 7,000 square foot space in the same property.
Yeah, for the frontage, for sure, and for the configuration, like, look at it.
And, yeah, access to, like, if we got a lease, an offer to lease at $9.50 for that space, we would take it like that.
Yeah, and really look at it.
Yeah, I know, I was asking the question. And then also on your page 2, for the Autism Learning Center, the 1225 square feet, you guys are using $10. Yet you list $10.75 later on in your report, so I'm just curious as to what you're using for your
Oh.
lease fee valuation here.
So what are you saying, sorry?
Well, page 4, you're using your market rents here, you're using the subject, the 1225,
Oh, I
as
see.
a comparable, and you're saying $10.75. And I believe what the city had received was a different number also, which is pretty inconsistent, so I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
curious as to what the actual,
I can confirm that on the comparables, the January 1 rent is correct for 2018, but the reason is when we send in our comps, or our reporting for 2017, it was probably a different rent at that time. And so maybe the 2017 rent got into this part, that the January 1, 2018, the 1075 is actually the rent, and that was prior to the reference date, so it's not post-reference.
January 1, 2018 was prior to reference date? So would you use the 1075 then in your?
Yeah, probably should use the 1075, yeah.
Okay. And then just one last question. You guys raised the issue of management being expensed at 5%. And before, you guys kind of joked around about what's not recovered for your management fees, but it was around $2,000. You said the total expense,
We joked
based on
around.
what Justin was saying, he was talking about the simple math, was it the total expense was 35 around for the property in 2017? I just want to be clear on exactly how much is not recovered.
Okay, so can you say the question one more time? I was looking for my stuff.
So in your rebuttal package, you guys had the management fees as part of your recoverable expenses.
Yes.
Which we went over, and Justin said that there's portions of it that aren't recovered, we just don't know how much it is, so I'm
Correct.
looking for exactly what that number would be.
Oh, but the 5% is not referring only to management fees on that brief, page 3.
Yeah, we said it was previously labeled as management, but it's supposed to recognize the non-recoverable expenses that property incurs.
Where is the label here? I guess my issue with that is just, you're using at least fee valuation here and actuals, but then, wouldn't you then follow the logic of using actuals for your expenses? And stabilize those, is my
Well, I
question.
could use actuals, but it would be much higher than the 5% I used. I'm trying to be reasonable, right? Because we've been over on page 6 and 7 and 8 of the rebuttal, that the non-recoverables were, much higher than the 27,000 I've included in the brief here.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
Since the assessor was raising the question about what exactly was the amount for non-comparables, I just want to make sure that I'm correct in what I took notes on as you were speaking earlier. In 2015, 76,000.
Yep. Yes, it was 76,344, but I said 76,000, that's right.
2016, 20,000
Correct.
roughly.
Yep.
And then 46,000.
Correct. Yep.
That back space that has been difficult to lease, what has actually gone into that space from time to time?
We had like a kids dance studio for a number of years. And that's what was in there.
And it's suited for that sort of use?
It wasn't. The issue that we had with the dance studio, and one of the reasons they left, is having offices adjacent to it, especially for autism, or, you know, children with autism, was a real challenge in terms of mitigating the noise.
Ah.
And so we said to them, you know, if you're going to renew, you're gonna have to do better sound mitigation, and that's part of the reason they left.
I see. When did the grocery store vacate that building? How long ago was that?
Would have been in maybe the late 70s.
Long time. I was just looking at the site plan, I guess it's here,
It says it was built in
page 8.
76, so I don't know what that says.
Page 8.
Maybe
Sorry,
late
just a
80s.
little bit of orientation. So it fronts onto Rodland. Is there a street to the east or to the west?
So there's on the one side, it used to be a Domo, but then they demolished it. There's a Little Caesars, a wine, so that on the.
Which side?
West side.
On the west side?
So the west side, there isn't any, and then on the east side is the co-op, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it used to be the Charleswood Hotel, now it's the co-op gas station.
There's no streets.
There's no
Yeah.
streets on
It's been a
either
while.
side,
Yeah.
okay. The parking, the space for parking here, is that in excess of what would actually be required for the tenants that are in there, or
I
not?
don't know the parking
The,
issue.
the issue is where the parking is more than anything, especially for the vacant space. You know, if you're trying to park there and then there's people
You're at
at
the
the
back.
contractor, yeah. You know, as much as it's great to have 40 stalls in the back, it doesn't, it's not really helpful. And so it might not be underparked generally, but it's underparked for the west side of the site.
And was that actually, the back part, was that the truck access for the grocery store?
Yeah, it must have been.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay, those are my only questions.
I thank you. Mr. Stain?
I just want to touch on the cap rate, if you don't mind. I know you've explained, and I've listened now. What are you're saying it's partly now office? You were kind of, what, on these, for instance, the cap rate survey report, are you classifying it as a regional mall? What would you classify it as?
I'm saying it's not really anything. I mean, it's not a purebred, anything. Like this center's kind of a mutt now. It's, we've been doing a lot of office because that's who we can get into there. And so really trying to say, oh, it should fit into suburban office, or it should fit into neighborhood shopping center, really it doesn't fit into any of those. And so what we're taking issue with is trying to say, well, it needs to be 80th percentile of something. It's not, whether that's neighborhood shopping center or suburban office. That, for this asset, an 8% cap rate is reasonable because it isn't any of those things.
Which does fall into the whole range of cap rates for neighborhood shopping center.
Say that again?
It falls within the whole range of the neighborhood shopping center, so I admit it's above the 80th percentile, but this is not a typical.
Neighborhood shopping center, and it falls within the cap rate range also for suburban office, because it isn't either. You wouldn't call it suburban
Are you
office.
looking at a cap rate study there?
Yes.
The same
Which-
one, yes.
Which, is that the Cushman Wakefield?
No, City of Winnipeg.
Different one?
Talking about page 5.
Huh?
They're talking about this table on page
Yeah,
5.
well, I'm looking at a different one.
Yeah, so there's the City of Winnipeg, the total cap rate range, and then there's the 20 to 80 percentile. I was looking at the total cap rate
Okay,
range.
yeah, no, that's fine, I've got that. Oh, that's fine, I just wanted to,
It's a challenging one. I mean, even for us to figure out what to call
oh,
it,
and
it's
I
hard.
appreciate that, but, okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Where is that?
I'm just using this as a guide. But it depends, that's industrial. That's it. I don't see. Well, true, yeah. Okay,
You okay, Ron?
I'm fine.
Mr. Gentleman, because you have and represent lots of properties, have you not done your own sort of cap study at all? Or attempted to, or?
Well, first of all, we don't sell anything.
Yeah.
No, okay. Okay,
yeah,
so you don't have the data.
Exactly.
So you just rely on the published reports then, and?
So, yeah, I mean, we looked at the, the published Collier, CBRE, Cushman, and thought, is there anything of value, or is it gonna muddy the waters, knowing that, we're gonna be arguing off of this table, but in cases where it's not appropriate, we feel
Yeah.
the need to bring that information forward.
So you concluded that the 8% is applicable to the subject?
Yes.
It's basically taking a cap rate and deducting or adding, in this case, to mitigate the risk of this property.
Did you do anything in regards to looking at what the average increase was from, time to time? From, these type of properties?
The assessments
Yeah,
from other cycles?
yeah, like from the previous one. I mean, you had mentioned, but, that's gonna change also because Mr. Taylor reduced his,
Correct.
okay, so,
Right.
but you didn't look at any, there's no stats around in regards to from one cycle to the other for, these type of properties?
Well,
Especially where we're appealing so many of them.
Yeah.
I think relying on the general assessors, change from cycle to cycle, we're obviously taking issue with a lot of the valuations, and so we didn't think it would be helpful to compare those.
All right.
and just one more thing, in most cases, I would say, I think for probably 90% of these 8 properties today, they were all at this panel, this particular panel, 2 years ago. So in our opinion, we're starting from a value from 2 years ago, that was the correct value 2 years ago, right? And now we're coming and we're seeing increases of 20 and 30% in 2 years. The city changed from a 4-year cycle to a 2-year cycle, and I thought, that would smooth out some of the changes, but we've found that it hasn't.
Okay, I thank you. Summation, Mr. Taylor?
My own summation would be with my revised 13% vacancy, that we're looking at much higher expense allowances then. If we're looking at shortfall combined with the undercovered expense, it's 10% of the effective gross income, and if we're combining vacancy in with that as well, it's 21% of the potential gross income, so. I feel like my recommendation is fair, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Gentleman and gentlemen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, having just gone over it, we feel the cap rate should be higher and that the actual rents should be used. And I mean, the fact that they've got a model-driven rent of a freestanding restaurant speaks to, the quality of our information and the quality of what the model's providing in terms of what you should consider for the actual rents.
Okay, I thank you. So we'll go to the next property on Henderson Highway, 1341. Mr. Taylor?
Sure. So file number 19-3089 for 1341 Henderson Highway, the roll number is
Give me just a
04.
minute. I'm not on, what are we doing?
1341 Henderson.
Okay, fine, I'm sorry, I couldn't see it on here. No, I'm good, that's okay.
The roll number is 0400554700. The proposed 2020 assessed value is $3,621,000. 2 buildings on site with 7 units. We're looking at here. Actually, year built was 88. Recent effective year built in 1995 for renovations. Plan and gross floor area is about 14,126 square feet. We're using a leasable area today of 13,893. Flipping over to page 2. You see the income and expense questionnaire information as reported. For 2015 through 2017, again, no vacancies on site. Expenses there range from just under $2,000 up to 12.5, and the NOI generally being from 252 to 269. Subject property leases below. Again, sorry, range from $14 a square foot up to $24.50 a square foot as reported. Rental comparables on page 3. Again, trying to stick to commercial rents, similar in age, size, and in the area. Those range from $15 a square foot up to $21.59 a square foot. Page 4 just shows our model-driven workup for the subject property here. Again, we've applied for neighborhood shopping center, standard vacancy allowance of 4%, undercovered expenses 2%, shortfall being $8, and again, the cap rate at 7.3% for the 8th percentile there to get to that $3,621,000. Page 7 just shows the location there on Henderson Highway. This where it has the Pizza Hut fronting Henderson there at Springfield, and the L-shaped strip mall at the back. Again, this property is more of a strip mall really than a neighborhood shopping center, but that's just my opinion. That we have income expense questionnaires in addition to the post-reference leasing brochure I've included here, as the unit on the ad there went vacant after the reference date. But yeah, that's just for more illustration purposes for the board. And that's everything.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Questions of the assessor?
Yes. Once again, on page 2, I just have a question about the expenses listed there. Can you tell me how you arrived at the 12,642 in 2017?
12,642. Again, as reported, that was the unrecovered expense amount listed on my page 10. So that's for the leasing, marketing, and the professional fees there.
So you're including leasing and marketing?
I'm listing what was reported for unrecovered expenses.
Okay. So then the recoverable expenses of $172,008 less the recoveries of $168,292, that's not included in that?
That's not what I listed. I listed, yeah, the unrecovered expenses.
Okay. And is that more than 2%?
12,000.
Much more than 2%?
I don't know, I didn't do the math. Would you like me to calculate it?
No, that's fine. But if I said it was around 5%? Is it 5%? It's about 5%. Okay, that's fine. you said that your rent comparables go from 15 to 29. I'm sorry, I don't see the 29.
So 15 to 2159 at the very bottom
To 21.
on Henderson Highway.
On page 4, most of your rents are, well, the number of rents are higher than that range.
Yep.
Did you say that some of the malls on your comparables are superior and
I didn't really include any rent comparables for, I guess the first, if you're looking at the first units there, the 3,100 square feet, that's for the bank credit union, it says for tenant class. Similarly, the Pizza Hut for the freestanding chain restaurant, $22.99. Again, there's no rent comparables for that either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And your vacancy shortfall, no, forget that, leave that one out. On page 11 of your brief, if you'll notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tenants that have fairly current leases, 2014. Would the current rents be market for those?
You mean the credit union?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the hairs.
The renewals?
salon. Yeah, the renewals.
Again, without looking at the actual lease document, I can't tell how the negotiations went on any of these, so I wouldn't comment on that.
Okay.
Because they all started back in the early 2000s, right?
Some of them started, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I have a quick page of rebuttal as well on the comparables.
Okay, you might as well hand it over now then. See what we're dealing with. Thank you, madam. All right. Go ahead.
Oh. 925 Headmaster is, once again, a shopping center that has more anchor type tenants. And it's a larger mall which, with many tenants, reduces the risk in the shopping center. Because when one goes vacant, it's a much smaller portion of the bigger mall, it's a lower risk. There's a Tim Hortons draw. 1919 Henderson has a nice new facade, nice parking, and fronts directly right on Henderson. 959 Henderson, I'm not sure what would be comparable to the subject in this. I don't see really any comparable tenants or anything. It does have lots of frontage on Henderson and a nice parking lot, but I don't see any similar comps there. 686 Springfield Road, I would say, is the most comparable to the subject. It has an older facade, just like the subject has. 1721 again has nice frontage along Henderson, I'm sorry, and good visibility. And 2001 Henderson is anchored by a liquor mart, which is a strong anchor, and again has good frontage rate on Henderson.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions?
I'm just not sure who's anchoring Headmaster.
I would say Tim Hortons.
Wait,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Boraski, any questions?
Do you mind, could you calculate those percentages for the non-recoverable expenses that you list for 15, 16, and 17?
Are you asking me? I thought we were talking about the rebuttal package right now.
Yeah.
How do you want to do this?
We're just gonna deal with the rebuttal.
Only with the rebuttal at this point?
Right now? Yeah.
Okay,
Then I can do that after.
then I have no questions.
Mr. Stenny?
No questions.
Okay. I think, Mr. Boraski, you could ask questions of the assessor.
There we go. Do you mind calculating those?
Yeah, sorry.
amounts?
So you're talking about on page 4?
Yes, no, page 2. Your page 2, where you listed for 15, 16, 17 non-recoverable expenses.
You want those as opposed to the rental revenue reported? You don't know the percentages for that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's 4% for 2017. Getting a percentage. This calculator is, can I use my own calculator?
Sure. Whatever.
Will lead to your answers.
Fair's fair, he's using it.
That's not often an issue at a hearing until people are using their phones, so I try to read my list. So for 2016, it was 0.7%. Then it was 4.3% for 2015. And again, I would suggest that that's for total unrecovered expenses, not just the 2% you see on the work. That would include shortfall on other amounts, so. The cost of carrying the vacant space, essentially what the city's allowing for shortfall is an unrecovered expense.
So you're
That's
saying that
nature.
you're accounting for a shortfall outside of this?
I'm saying that the city's doing things on a market approach, whereas lots of times we're talking with the owner and they're saying, well, my NOI is this, and my expenses are this, but I'm saying that not just to zero in on that there's 2% unrecoverable, but there's also a shortfall allowance the city's giving. In this instance, it's not a ton at the 4,446, but we're allowing for other amounts here. We're also allowing for 4% vacancy as well.
It's hard not to make a comparison with the last property that we were dealing with. Does this property, being at the corner of Springfield and Henderson, have superior visibility, and particularly relative to your comparables? Is visibility, amount of traffic, that's
Well, you'll see.
does that have a bearing on the rents?
Would the traffic have bearing on the rents? No, it would have bearing on, like, if you're looking at land value. For this one, I mean, that's more subjective in terms of what you're putting towards capitalization rate. For myself, you're looking at it, again, I think I alluded in my presentation, that's more of a strip mall with pizza in the front. So if you're looking at it as a strip mall, I know before we were looking at the table on my page 5, usually those come with a lower capitalization rate. However, with it being at the rear of the property, it wouldn't be the same as, like, I guess what's included in the rebuttal package. lots of those are strip malls that the whole strip fronts the street, whereas this one, the strip mall, I guess, would mostly front the street.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the strip mall cap rates, you're looking at a higher cap rate for strip malls.
And so.
That's an explanation.
Why it is the actual same amount as the previous property, but you're looking at a completely different category, and it's just incidental that it was the same?
Oh, yeah, if
Cap
you're
rate.
looking at, again, if you're looking at neighborhood shopping centers, that's your question here, because we're comparing the 7.3 back and forth is more what you're looking at here. So again, they're both, if we're looking at the other two, both the ages are similar, sizes, this one's a bit smaller. Again, it's not a bright, new, shiny neighborhood shopping center like you'd see at Sage Creek or the new suburban developments. It's an older strip mall with a Pizza Hut in the front. So, lots of these ones, I don't know, if I was to classify it again, I would classify it as a strip mall, but not as a top-notch strip mall.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I have no question.
You get a chance to visit this property, Mr. Taylor, at all,
Yeah.
or, yeah? You drive past it, or go through it, or?
Drive past, I did get out of the car, so I don't wanna say just drove past on Henderson, I did go into the lot and got out and walked around the property, yes.
So, there's no overrides on here at all, or anything like that, or,
Oh, you're talking for rents?
well, anything, you know?
There are no overrides. Again, if I was to review this de novo or whatever, I would put a strip mall on it, and that would probably bring the rents down a touch, but it also would bring down the cap rate. It would effectively be a wash.
All right. I thank you. Mr. Levin, gentlemen, your presentation?
Thank you. So we'll just talk a little bit more about the visibility and that sort of thing. Like Mr. Taylor said, the multi-tenant portion is towards the back and it doesn't actually front right on Henderson. The Pizza Hut is in front and sort of blocks the visibility. The facade has not been done and it's old with old signage and sort of not an up-to-date property at this point. The Pizza Hut in the front is the old Red Roof brand, and the Pizza Huts are going away from those. They are closing those big freestanding stores and they're doing express stores that are smaller and they're in line. This one is, I think, I'm not sure if it's month to month. Is this one still month to month? I can't.
It's not, we have a little bit of term left.
No, we haven't turned this on this one. We've had experience with two other Pizza Huts on Pembina Highway where they close this type of unit. They're not doing, they don't like these units anymore, Pizza Hut. They don't have the sales for these types of units. They haven't invested in them. They're sitting and they're old, and we know from our experience on Pembina Highway with two of these that when the lease is up, they close them, and we're left with an old Pizza Hut, which is not leasable. We know that from our experience. And so that is the problem with this property. It has this old Pizza Hut on it that in a couple of years will, we know it will close. It's not gonna stay. And so that is the situation here. We have Boston Pizza open just down the street, and that's affected the Pizza Hut sales. And the Springfield Road connected to La Jamodier, but with the Chief Peguis Trail extension, it was cut off, so that reduced the traffic as well to this site. Once again, we have a situation where in 2018, the value was $2,889,000, and in 2 years, they've increased the value by 25%. And all we have is the same situation with just 2 more years closer to the Pizza Hut closing is really how it is for this property. On page 2 and page 3, you can see the visibility from Henderson Highway. It's not great, you cannot even see, you really can't see the multi-tenant portion at the back. I guess from Springfield Road you can, but that's not a main road like Henderson Highway. So page 2 and page 3. So page 4. There's the income workup. We've used actual rents again in this situation. We've used the 4% vacancy allowance and shortfall. We've increased the shortfall to $10 because the shortfall for this property has been $10 and up to as high as $12. It's a smaller property, 13,000 feet. You don't get the economies of scale with the smaller shopping centers, so the operating expenses tend to be higher. And so we are in this situation because it's a smaller mall. We talked about the non-recoverable portions of 5% and 2%, and we capped it at 8% because of the Pizza Hut risk. We're also looking at the roof on this property is beyond, very close to beyond its useful life at this point. So we've been paying a few, probably more roof expenses, and we will have to do the roof shortly. Page 5, we come to a value of $3,026,000, which is a little bit higher than the 2018 assessment. Sorry, page 5, did I say page 6? 5. Page 6 is the comparables. The first 3 on Henderson Highway are a very similar mall, just down the street. It's an L shape with the same way. It doesn't front on Henderson, just like the subject. And so we thought those were among the most comparable rents. So the 1411 all the way down to the 1415 are a similar mall that are quite similar. Roblin has some of the similar smaller spaces, and Roblin is a similar type of location, or these malls are similar. And the rents we use in valuation are market or higher, supported by the market rent comparables on page 6. We've used the 4% vacancy for this property. It's been up and down. I mean, the last few years we haven't had any vacancy, but certainly that's not the case forever, and certainly won't be in a few years. Shortfall, we've used $10, and on page 7, that's the shortfall for the last 4 years. The taxes are $5 alone, just taxes alone are $5 for this property. So that leaves $5 for the balance, which I said, like on a smaller on a smaller footprint, the operating costs are higher. We've gone over the non-recoverable analysis, but I'll refer back to the assessor's brief where on page 10, he's referred to the non-recoverable expenses at the bottom, that he said is 4.7% of $12,000, but also, like I said before, you can see that the recoverable expenses are $172,811.
Sorry, where are you?
I'm back on the assessor's brief on page 10. The recoverable expenses are $172,811, and the recoveries above, you can see under operating revenue, are $168,000. So we don't recover the full operating expenses either. So the 12,000 he's referring to is only a portion. There's really this additional 5,000 that's non-recovered. So in fact, the non-recoverables are 17,000, not just the 12.
Which is 6% for 2017.
So what was that figure you provided?
It's 17,162 is the total, and it's about 6%.
Can you give me that again? I can't hear you.
Sure, 17,162, and that works out to about 6%.
Okay.
And again, this is 1 year, it could be lower in the next year, but it also could be much higher the next year. So we have to account for that it's gonna go like this over the years. Page 8.
And so with cap rate, and I do want to preface this with saying, where you're talking about 20th to 80th percentile, that does mean that you've got, what would that be, a fifth of the properties that are at the low end and a fifth of the properties at the high end. So I don't want you to think, we think all of our properties are the worst. Where we have a property that's challenged like this or the previous one, we're bringing up cap rate to say the 20th to the 80th isn't appropriate. But we do agree on a lot of them. So I don't want you to think we're trying to push all of our properties outside of the 20 to 80th. But this is another example of, in terms of a neighborhood shopping center, this would fall outside of the 80% of the best ones, because you have a Pizza Hut that's gonna close right on the corner, blocking visibility for the rest of the mall. And so it's a risky proposition, because either you're gonna have to spend a bunch of money to make that Pizza Hut not look like a Pizza Hut again, or you're gonna have to hope that somebody decides they're the one restaurant that can make it go in an old Pizza Hut. So we used an 8% cap here. Again, it's outside of the 20th to 80th, but it's because this mall's outside of the 20th to 80th.
In addition to that, 47% of the leases at the date of their reference are going to expire within 1 year. So that's something else an investor and owner looks at. At the reference date, in 1 year, 47% of the leases are gonna expire. So, that can be a positive, but it's, more likely a negative. Everything is turning over, and it can create vacancy, and it's an uncertainty, so that makes it a risk.
And that risk is accounted for by having a higher capitalization rate. Right? You have more risk, you expect a higher return.
Page 9, again, just this property again was recommended by an assessor at the last go around at $2,889,000, and we don't see anything that would suggest it increased by 25% since that time. That's it.
I thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I gotta ask that page 9 be removed from the appellant's brief, just because it was without prejudice. It states it clearly there. It's bad form to include this in your submission.
But we agreed with this. This was, instead of having a 15-1 in here, this is how we agreed to it.
Again, we should not have this. If it's without prejudice, it shouldn't be included in.
These were 15-1s were done based on these numbers. I just didn't have the 15-1s. I asked Kara for them, and she couldn't supply them to me. I didn't have them in my file.
Okay, you still would have had your assessment notices, your
Oh,
tax
so I
bill.
picked the wrong document, okay.
Okay.
Moving to your page 8, when your justification for using an 8% cap rate, most of the properties we're gonna look at, most properties that are appealed will eventually have leases that expire, correct?
Oh, yeah, of course. But with 1 year is a short term.
Okay, but that's all post-reference, correct?
But the
But
lease,
at the reference date, we know they are expiring within a year, so we know that information. We're not gonna ignore that information just because the date hasn't come yet. And the
Page
investor would
7.
do that.
Yeah, the investor would look at, the potential purchaser would look at the income received on the date they're looking to purchase. They would also look at those as well, but they were also looking at that snapshot in time. They probably would have access to the leases as well. Page 7, you guys for your vacancy analysis use strip malls.
Pardon me?
Well, I just wanna correct you, the assessment department
Oh,
market
for strip malls, you
vacancies
know what?
for neighborhood shopping centers, strip
Okay.
malls is a lesser vacancy rate, so.
Okay, well, I
wasn't
used the
sure what you
same, I
guys were-
used the same 4% as you.
And then, page 6 on your market rent comparables. So you've used lots of Roblin Boulevard here. Is Roblin Boulevard comparable to Henderson Highway in any way, other than it's just a street?
I think these particular malls are comparable,
So the one we just looked at that used to be a grocery store that's now piecemeal together
yeah.
is the same as an L-shaped strip mall with pizza in the front?
I think it's a similar look, it's a similar type of tenants. I said that the first 5 were the most comparable and on Henderson.
First 5 on Henderson. The other thing, you guys are, I know you're affiliated with some Boston Pizzas and Pizza Huts. You're not
We're not affiliated with Pizza Hut.
Pizza Huts anymore, no?
At all, ever.
Ever.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bradski?
On page 8, you have the estimated cost to repurpose the Pizza Hut as $275,000. Where did that come from?
We repurposed one already and we're working on a second one. It's actually much more than that.
Yes.
Alex?
As we get into the property, we find other things that need to get done, so our total is actually closer to 250,000 now.
No, it was
Sorry.
275.
Oh, sorry.
350.
Yeah, that could be right, I can pull up the quote here.
But it's very expensive to, because people don't like to lease these old Pizza Huts. They don't like them to look like old Pizza Huts, so you gotta put up a new facade to cover up the roof effectively, and that's expensive.
We've sat with one vacant for a long time, trying to lease it as the Pizza Hut shape, and it's no-go.
But if you're driving on South Pembina, you can check out where the pizza used to be at Greencrest and see what we were doing, and you won't even recognize it.
2750 Pembina.
And that's necessary, like, it can't look like a Pizza Hut.
If there is an actual figure, I wouldn't mind hearing
Yeah,
that.
I'll get it for you right now.
Maybe we can
Yeah, we can keep going.
get
and I'll
back
get
to
it
it, yeah, he's gonna
Yeah.
have a couple of numbers.
Okay.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I don't want to belabor this Pizza Hut thing, but they definitely have terminated that, the lease. They actually have, or is that an assumption?
It's an assumption at this point.
We know it'll happen, though, they aren't staying in any of these old Pizza Huts,
Say that again?
anywhere in Winnipeg.
They
You-
have not terminated, they are going to, they so far are staying till the end of the lease term, but we've had 2 of the similar situations already where they've terminated.
So,
So-
yeah, they're gonna, they've told us we're not staying, but there's no formal notice they have to provide, it's just when their lease is up, they're gonna move.
And you're referring on your page 7 that that's also true of Pembina Highway?
Oh, it's happened already at Pembina Highway.
So that one is fait accompli. That was-
2750 Pembina Highway, that has happened. 715
Is
Pembina Highway
month to month.
is month to month, and they're.
So Shindico would have the opportunity to get another tenant for those properties.
To realistically get another tenant, we'll have to spend the.
Well, I realize you'd have to
Yeah.
reconfigure the building, I understand that. But can you change the cap rate because of that possibility?
Knowing that you're gonna have to reinvest in a property. you
Is there
would-
anything in the communication, I want to keep digging in, that would be subject to, they would stay if lease was renewed at a lower rate or anything like that?
No, they want to do stores that are about,
1,200 feet.
yeah, they don't want the 3,700 feet anymore.
So
They're
they
only
may
doing,
keep some of it.
No.
Well, no, it's not possible with that.
Well, no, I'm-
With that freestanding space. You know, would they move into the strip portion? Maybe, if we had a space, but they're not gonna stay in that big.
But what I'm looking at, I don't know what my two counterparts are, do you change the cap rate because of an AB?
Of a risk, yes. We changed the cap rate
Well,
because
it's
of
not
this
a risk if it's gonna happen, but wouldn't you change that when that happens? Whatever year that happens?
If you were buying it though, and you were familiar with what's happening in the marketplace, I think you would fairly say this is, I've got a price that this is gonna happen into this deal and account for that on cap rate. And that's what we're doing. Because if we could find an investor to buy it thinking the Pizza Hut was gonna stay and pay a premium for that, you might sell it. But everybody who would be buying a Pizza Hut would know that it's not going to be a Pizza Hut as soon as the lease is up.
And our billings to date on the Pizza Hut are 315,608.
What was that?
315,608,
For the,
the South Pembina Pizza Hut.
The renovation cost.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Summation, Mr. Taylor?
Like,
Summation,
I think the discussion on cap rate there was a fine enough summation for us.
all right. Before we go on to the next one, we're gonna take about a 5-minute break. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. And the next property is London Street, 511. Whenever you're ready.
the recommendation on the property, sorry, I'll start with the phone number. 19-3088, and the roll number is 0205054700. Recommendation today, which I believe is acceptable, was to reduce the value to a total value of $6,752,000. And the split then would be, the exempt portion doesn't change, just the taxable portion changes from the 6617 down to 5457.
Okay, maybe you can repeat the figures because,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
So if you look at the
Do the 60.
60, so
Yeah.
it goes from the 6,617,000
Yeah.
to 5,457,000.
Okay, and the 40
It stays the same.
stays the same. Gentlemen, are you aware of the recommendation or are you in agreement?
yes and yes.
Ooh.
Yay.
So,
Okay,
just
and
what
Mr.
was the
Taylor?
actual agreed amount there? You get a lot of numbers. What,
Give us
Okay,
the
okay,
final
that's-
figure, Mr. Taylor.
The final figure is $6,752,000,
all right.
and that's the total.
And the reasoning,
Adjustment to the rent for one of the units.
market rents,
Yep.
and you were in agreement?
Yes.
Any questions from the panel members?
Nope.
No,
Thank you then. We'll go on to Anderson Highway,
I think we'll bring it up.
1046.
So we wanted to raise one issue with this property, just at the offset.
Which one?
The
Henderson?
46 Henderson, yeah.
Okay.
We noticed in reviewing the brief and the materials we provided that there's a typographical or accounting
Actually,
error,
it's a computer glitch.
a computer glitch in our brief.
In
and
your
so-
brief?
In our brief. And so we included, knowing that we were gonna have to swear that this information is true, we included the correct information as part of the, actually, not as a rebuttal, but as information that we have handouts for the board. So we wanted to provide it because it's the correct information that isn't in our brief.
It's a lease rate. Can I explain it?
Sure, but it's not new information, it's just
It's not new
additional
It's-
information?
It's
Say additional.
It's additional.
Okay.
Okay, the situation is, one particular tenant pays rent over 9 months, They don't pay over 12 months.
Okay.
The computer prints off the rent roll at a 12-month.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the rate in our brief, and actually the rate that's been reported to the city because of the computer glitch is wrong because it's based on 12 months of that monthly rate, when in fact the tenant is only paying 9 months at that monthly rate.
Okay.
So I have the lease
Okay.
to show that, and I have the new workup,
That'll
and I
be-
have the ledger.
That'll be part of, because it's different.
It's different, and it's,
So is the assessment department notified of that? Or just now?
I just found it last night.
Okay, so, Mr. Taylor, that's gonna probably, well,
Can be presented as rebuttal to my evidence,
Yeah.
because mine's based
okay,
on what they're
I
reporting.
think we'll treat it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and they can make me aware
Yeah.
that something's incorrect by via
Right.
rebuttal.
We'll treat it as rebuttal?
Okay,
Okay.
yep.
So, Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
Great. So we have file number 19-1987, roll number 0203137810, 1046 Henderson Highway, Rossmere Shopping Center. So we have the institutional property, the library portion as 40E. The remainder of the mall or there is 60T. So we're looking at a total 2020 value of $11,448,000 today.
Yeah.
Anyways, flipping to page 2. We got the subject property leases, which I got a nice surprise on, some things different than what's reported here. Anyways, we see that there's a increase in vacancy in 2017. Prior to that, the previous 3 years, they were all below 1% for vacancy at the top of the page there. See, generally the rental revenue, the potential revenue is around $800,000. Just to be very rudimentary on that. And the net operating income as reported varies from a low of $693 recently with that vacancy up to a high of $761. Again, trying to find rental comparables, I mean, similar vintage, size, commercial use along Henderson Highway on page 3. So we have the high there at $37, which is more just to support the rate we've used for the Tims on the site here. But the remainder of them, other than that one, range from $16.50 up to $24 a square foot. So page 4, sorry, there's a separate income stream just for the Tim Hortons restaurant, I guess pad site at the front. We're using a model rent of $34.03. I believe the actual reported rent was $38.60 a square foot. And again, I use that comparable coffee house rent of $37 on Henderson to support the $34.03 we're using. Vacancy for restaurants is at 3%. Shortfall is $750, the unrecovered expenses is 2%. To supplement that total unrecoverable expenses. And the capitalization rate just for the restaurant portion is 6.35%. Flipping over to the neighborhood shopping center portion, I guess we could look at page 6 quickly. That's just the library portion that's exempt. Here we have 18,060 square feet. We have our model rent of $17.23 a square foot. I believe the owner is achieving a rent of $16.25, if I'm not mistaken. And then the standard parameters there will match what we see back on page 5. Getting me to flip around all the place, just then. So page 5, we see the valuation for the neighborhood shopping center. Again, we have some basement space here as well. I believe it's the bowling alley, so we're using a modeled rent of $8.05. I think that's the tenant they're talking about, is the 9-month tenant. That was reported at $7.33, I believe, potentially incorrectly. The rest of them are all model-driven rents. Well, they're all model-driven rents. We also have the 3,740 listed as basement space. I have been in the bowling alley in the basement. I am not aware where this other space is in the basement in relation to the subject property. But again, standard parameters, as we see on pages 5 and 6, are consistent. So vacancy for neighbor traffic centers is 4%, as we've heard earlier today. Shortfall is $8 a square foot, as we've heard earlier today, which supplements the unrecovered expense of 2%, and the capitalization rate, again, at 7.3%. Page 7 just shows a summary of all three streams put together onto one. Page 10 just shows the location subject property there, just Henderson Highway, I guess the southwest corner of Henderson and McLeod there, so you have access off McLeod and off Henderson. The Dairy Queen that fronts Henderson Highway and the Co-op gas bar and convenience store, those are on separate roll numbers, not applicable to the subject we're looking at today. As you can see, there's little borders around them. After that, we just have, again, I think the subject rent roll, income statement again, and a leasing brochure just showing the location of the basement square footage that's vacant, and the other unit that I believe is occupied presently, but I wasn't sure if it was vacant as of the reference date. Thank you.
I thank you. Questions?
Yes. Thank you.
Do they want to do the rebuttal now?
I think questions will do,
Okay.
okay, and then we'll do the rebuttal after.
Yeah, that's fine. My
Okay.
questions are really unchanged by, on page 2, once again, I was going to question about the expenses. Would you agree that they're quite a bit higher than 2% or the total of your?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Page 3, do you have any, you might have said this actually, but do you have any lower level comparables?
No.
Rent comparables, nothing in the lower level?
That didn't include the basement comparables, no.
Okay. Do you know that the center has no elevator to the lower level?
Yep.
Do you have any bowling alley comparables?
Here,
Yeah.
today? No.
Yeah.
No.
You said that the rent for the bowling alley on your page 5 was model driven.
Yep.
Where would the model get the rents from if you don't have any?
The model for basements? We get it from other reported basement rents.
What about bowling alleys?
We don't have an identifier for bowling alleys in the model. I don't think there's that many bowling alleys in the city
Right.
to do one.
So how would you determine a market rent
For a basement?
for a bowling alley? A bowling alley is pretty specific. It's not like we can just lease it to another use without a lot of work.
Not a lot of work, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't have anything else.
I thank you. Mr. Boreski?
Just going back to the bowling alley, are both premise 544 and 545 bowling alley?
I believe it's just 544 is the bowling alley.
Oh,
545, like you'll see in the leasing brochure, the size matches. It's listed as basement. Again, I did not go into that space, so I don't know exactly if it's office finish or a second bowling alley. So,
and just to go to the rent that was selected for the bowling alley, you're saying it's
Based on rents.
Based on all basement rents.
Correct. So storage,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
So the property, assuming it was bought in 1961, is that right? And you got an effective year?
yeah, we have 3 buildings on site.
Pardon?
We have 3 buildings on site, and yes, a portion of it was built in 61.
Not that it matters, but, so it was added to, so it was.
Yeah.
Just the new branches that came in and they,
Yeah, and the most recent part that was built in
Yeah.
1986, I believe, is the Tim Hortons freestanding restaurant.
that's all I have, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. I have no questions. I think, Dan, if you want to submit your rebuttal, that is fine.
It's sort of in pieces, because I have a regular rebuttal and then I have my correction.
Do the correction first.
Okay. There's 5 copies of each, I believe. 4 copies. Yeah, okay. And then, so there's the lease and there's the corrected workup. And,
Did you have the document?
I do, but I only have 1 copy because, I only have 1 copy printed at home.
Okay. Do you want that document as well?
Mr.
or-
Taylor, would you like that copy, the statement?
Which statement?
So what the third document is, it's our actual ledger to show that, you know, that they actually only pay 9 of 12 months of the year.
Not be in the lease part?
No, the lease actually says they pay over 10 months, but they pay a lower rate over 10 months, but I guess the library, or the bowling alley negotiated to pay over 9 months a higher rate. It's, so this is what they pay is in this ledger. It's the total amount is the same.
The total
10
amount's the same,
The
yeah.
total amount is the same, correct.
So the annual rent doesn't change. I don't feel like we need a ledger to back that up. So
Okay.
just the annual rent, we'll have to back the math out of backwards.
Okay. Seeing that you only have the 1 copy, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
and then okay, so we'll do this portion first.
Yes.
Okay, so the tenant, the bowling alley actually pays $9,472.22,
Sorry,
9 times.
We're looking at this?
We will be, yes. I'm just explaining
Okay. Yeah.
the get-go, the beginning of that. So they pay $9,472.22 9 times a year. And that works out to the lease amount, which is $550 per square foot for 10 times a year, which is a total of $85,250. So the annual rent is $85,250. So then the new income workup is exactly the same except for that 1 rent in my brief, so.
But that's in your brief. Okay.
Right,
Okay.
so the Rossmere Lanes pays $550 per square foot for $85,250 per year, and that is a newer lease, well, 2011 lease renewal. So what the computer, as I explained before, it took the monthly rent times 12 and came out to $733 per foot, but that's incorrect. Software that we use.
Mr. Taylor?
This is the 2011 lease?
Yeah.
Sorry, 2011 renewal,
Yes.
the 1991 lease?
I don't have that in front of me, but if you say it's not.
Just what it says on the front page.
I'll believe you. Yeah, that's right then.
And, yeah, no, I think everything else lines up, like the space is correct?
Yes, 15.5.
15.5, yeah. Those are my questions, yeah.
All right. Mr. Boreski? Questions in regards to the correction?
Just a question on the, sort of like the timing. They only pay in 9 months, they do not make a payment in 3 months of the year.
Correct, they only pay during league time, so they pay, I think,
Summer off,
summer off.
nobody goes down in the basement in the summertime.
Correct,
Okay,
so
understood.
they pay during league time.
Thank you, that's all.
Mr. Stenning?
No question.
Okay, now, I don't have any. Did you have other rebuttal
I do,
regards to the rent?
no, it's regard to something that the assessor and I spoke about, and he requested information, which I sent him, but I brought it as a rebuttal as well. I'm not, it's regarding the environmental.
You have yours, it's in your report, correct?
The
Your evidence?
The discussion of the environmental is in my report, but I have the factual
Oh, okay.
invoices and the one report that you asked me for. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I brought that as well.
Did you receive it, Mr. Taylor?
I believe so, I don't know exactly what she has in her hands.
Okay.
but,
Yeah, it's the same.
Well,
thing.
if you have it, Diane, let's
Yep.
hand it up.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we can comment.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. So maybe you want to, Mr. Lemon, talk about this?
Correct. The assessor and I spoke previously about a newer situation at the property in 2016. Phase 1 environmental was completed, and it was determined that there was some suspect contamination, and then they did a Phase 2 environmental and confirmed that there is some contamination from a dry cleaner that was on the site in 1984. Pinchin Environmental was attempting to provide a remediation plan, and that's extremely expensive, and we were trying to not have to do that. So they've since done some more testing where they will, we will hopefully avoid remediation, but we don't know yet the situation. So this happened in 2016, and what I'm showing here is just 3 invoices for the testing that they've done, and then the September 27th report, which is post-reference, showing that they still have to do more testing. And that's, the reason I included this report is because it sort of summarizes the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 that was done without bringing a 40-page report.
So, Mr. Taylor, you're aware of this?
Yeah, it's not post-reference, so it relates to the current physical condition, not anything economic, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you've kind of told everyone about the current physical condition and that's ongoing. Is it on the list of impacted sites for the province or contaminated site lists?
You know what, I didn't read that. I don't think it is at this point.
Okay.
Although that might be in the Phase 2 where they say that they've done that, but.
So right now, it's not on the list.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't
Okay.
know.
And Mr. Taylor, you don't know either.
I didn't see it on there when I
Okay.
looked, after you sent me the email.
Okay. Any questions from our panel? Sorry, the cost, is there cost of remediation?
So the way these proposals work is you do a Phase 1, which is, general property information. If they determine there's something where you need to do further studies, they'll actually go do a Phase 2, which is physical examination of what's happening on the site.
And drilling holes.
Yeah, drilling boreholes is predominantly what they'll do, and then if they find any issues, then the next step is for them to create a remediation plan or a management plan. they'll call it. And so that plan, it isn't how much, that'll be the cost of, once they prepare that plan, that'll say, here's the likely cost of coming up with a solution that'll be sufficient for you to be able to get financing or sell it to.
And that's not yet done.
And that's the proposal, is to get us the management plan, is what we provided here.
I'm a little bit confused maybe. Just go back, what exactly is happening here, because I've lost track of it. This isn't an environmental thing you're talking about, is it?
It is, it
Oh.
is, there is some levels
Okay.
that are above guidelines that are acceptable for human
And
safety.
I'm aware of those. So have they done a phase one?
Phase
Yes.
one, phase two.
And that was relative to what part of the property?
It's the corner sort of by the Chinese restaurant, by the Empress of China. It's the corner of the sort of strip portion, the
So it's only a
multi-tenant.
piece of the property, they don't have to do the whole property?
Correct. That's where the dry cleaner was
So
located,
what
yes.
would they assume has the problem contaminated property from the Chinese restaurant?
I'm sorry, what do they?
Well, they're doing, you say an environmental study?
They've done already, and they've confirmed that there
What?
is
They've
contamination.
confirmed that what?
They've confirmed contamination above guideline levels.
All right,
So we have to do something about it, and so
Yeah, no,
what this
I-
proposal is the, what is it gonna take for us to do to bring it within government regulations?
is the contamination affect the building or just the property?
It's on the corner of the building, and I believe they believe it is under the front corner of the Chinese
So it'd be
restaurant.
digging it up and,
They've just done boreholes at this point,
yeah,
but
so when did they do level two?
they've done a level two.
They've done it, so what did they do there?
They drilled about 6 boreholes
Okay,
and tested.
and are they fine at that level now?
No, and so the phase two, what came back not clean, kind of colloquially, and so that's why the next step is having to do this management plan to deal with the contamination the phase two found.
And it may not be relevant, I may be going to, but normally to a gas station or something like that, there is contamination from tank leakage and that type of thing. So what, not that it matters, but what contamination was in there?
A dry cleaner.
Oh, that's what I was getting to, a dry cleaner.
Sorry, yeah, a dry cleaner was on that site
I see.
in the 80s.
Okay. I understand.
Where are we?
So this is.
I think, Mr. Taylor, did you do your presentation? I think so.
I did, once
Okay.
they asked their question, they
Okay.
presented this,
Okay.
we've all asked them on this.
Okay.
So now you guys ask me, and then they do their presentation.
Okay,
I understand.
right here, right here,
What's that?
your
She's asked.
presentation?
I've asked questions.
So, yeah, we did our rebuttal, now you ask him on our rebuttal, and then we go, right?
No, they asked me on my presentation.
Presentation,
I don't
sorry.
believe the panel's asked me on my brief yet.
We haven't done your brief?
Ask
I don't
questions.
believe yet the panel has asked me questions yet.
Okay, and that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Mark? Questions of the assessor?
Maybe you did ask
I
about
did ask that.
the unit design.
That's what I thought. So, Mr. Stenning, I think you never had any questions,
Correct?
correct?
I assumed you didn't, that's why we moved on.
That's right.
Okay.
So, the floor is yours.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Okay. Once again, we are dealing with a converted grocery store. Similar to the other one, the bays are deeper, the units are deep, and there's some interior space that has hallways and shared washrooms, so they don't have frontage. And the configuration on the interior is functionally obsolete, just like the other one. There is a lower basement level. There's no elevator, so it's not barrier-free. There's a bowling alley in the basement, and then the other space has been various things like gyms and taekwondo and things like that, and right now it is vacant. It spends a lot of time vacant, and we have a lot of credit loss on that space. Even though we get a little taekwondo place, typically the rent hasn't been paid, so that's the situation with the basement. Page 1 talks about the dry cleaner again on the site, and the groundwater testing that was done, and Pinchin Environmental is handling this right now. And so far, we've spent about $28,000 on this before the reference date, and some more after the reference date. This this creates a risk in the shopping center. So first of all, a risk of unknown of what's going to come in the future. Are the guidelines going to change? You know, right now, we're not sure if we have to remediate. Once we determine that, will the guidelines change, or will we have to remediate for sure? That affects lending. A number of lenders won't touch the property if there is an environmental concern. So that's another risk for this shopping center. So this is a newer thing since the last reference date, since 2008, 16 value date. And so it is a new concern and a new risk for this property. Page 2, you can see a site plan of the property. So you can see the bowling alley is a major portion of the basement, and then that's the other vacant space. The library, the City of Winnipeg Library, is a huge portion of this property. That's a risk as well, although we do have a newer lease there. Anytime there's a significant portion of a shopping center that if it goes vacant, then the shopping center is 50% vacant. That creates risk. You can see the interior space. There's an office and a dentist, and they have hallways, and they have no frontage. And so once again, as a converted grocery store, it's not typical typical shopping center mall space. It's a little bit, it is functionally obsolete. Page 3 is going to have to be replaced with the workup that I provided earlier. And again, it's just got to be one correction of the rent for the bowling alley. This valuation uses actual rents for the property, and the 4% vacancy allowance, same shortfall as the assessor's providing, and the shortfall, which I guess it says management fee should be non-recoverable. It's using an old template, and a cap rate at 7.5. This comes to a value of $9,472,000. This is an increase over the 2018 value of $8,659,000. This includes the library as well. I've done it as a total workup, so to compare would be to go to the assessor's page 7, I believe, where he's got a total.
Did you break it down at all?
I didn't break it down. I guess I should have. We value a shopping center as a one property. It's one property. We're not going to sell off the Tim Hortons or the multi-tenant portion separately. We can't. I mean, it's that they're all on one title. So we value it as one property. We use one cap rate for that reason, and that's how it would typically done in the markets. You sell and have multiple cap rates for a sale of a property. It's the whole package. Page 5 has some comparable rents. You'll see that the actual rents I've used are greater or similar to the comparable rents. Most of them are on a lot of them are on Henderson and Pembina. I view those as fairly similar type properties and tenants, nail salons and singletons and that sort of thing. I agree that bowling alley comparables are difficult to find. An actual rent from a 2011 lease would be market. The lease is, how long, it was 10 years from 2011, so anybody buying the shopping center is gonna get $5.50 per square foot for the next 10 years, so any different rent doesn't really make any sense. Once again, the non-recoverable analysis is the same for the same argument as the other properties. The last 3 years, it's been 16%, 10%, 5%, so the 2% allowed, plus the shortfall is not, is not market for this property.
And then speaking again to the cap rate, again, we're, you know, this is technically a neighborhood shopping center, but we're dealing with the weird ones, right? It's got a significant basement, big bay depths, and a reliance on, you know, the library. The revenue, you know, that's not a tenant we would realistically be able to replace. And then compounding that is this unknown environmental issue that we're having. So if you had a person buying it, they would have difficulty placing conventional debt on it, and so it has a risk profile that's outside of the normal 80%. And so where, you know, where we're looking at, you know, we're saying 7.5, whereas the blended cap rate that the assessor's using is 7.21, which would put, you know, this firmly in a normal shopping center, and just isn't that.
We've taken a very little
Increase in terms of the assessor's effective cap rate for the whole center is 7.21. We used 7.5, recognizing that this is slightly better than the other ones we talked to, but still, it's out of the norm for a shopping center.
So again, the value we've arrived at is $9,472,000. And that's all, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Couple quick questions. Did you know what's in that other basement space?
Right now it's vacant, but like I said, it's been taekwondo and little gym type things. I think that's the only type of tenant.
MMA and
Boxing,
boxing,
oh, it's
yeah.
boxing.
Is it like empty right now?
It's empty right now, and it's empty at the residence day.
And you didn't really have comparables for that though, right?
No,
For basement space for the $5 you're using?
right.
And despite it being smaller than the other space you're getting $5.50 for, economies of scale wouldn't apply.
Yeah, it wouldn't. I mean, that's another one, if somebody brought us a $5 off at least, we'd take it.
That's what your reasoning is you take $5 on it, that's why you're putting that there.
That's, yeah, I mean,
It's been a tough space always.
And then your big players here in this mall, or whatever you wanna call it, are the library, the bowling alley, and Tim's essentially, based on your rent roll?
on a revenue basis,
Yes.
yeah.
And the library and bowling alley have both been there a long time.
Yes, yeah. No, I'm not disputing that at all.
Although the library did shake us down for the Schindelman Ackman Library at the last renewal, so they have threatened to move in the past until we made a donation to a reading room there.
Is that in the lease?
It was a side deal we made to get a renewal.
So no. And back to what you were talking about before with other properties, so you feel this one is outside the 80th percentile?
Yeah, the risk between the basement and the environmental would take it outside of the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borowski?
Are bowling alleys flourishing, dying, holding their own in Winnipeg?
You know what, there's a market, I think, for a few bowling alleys in the city like we have. I I think that's about it.
You don't,
Yeah,
you don't really see
need a
new
few
ones.
bowling alleys, but yeah, well,
They're like curling clubs, like people will go to them, but you're not opening new ones.
Have any closed recently?
Well, Academy Lane's relocated from their traditional location on Academy,
Polo Park closed, right? There's no more bowling alley.
and Polo Park closed, so
Some
some.
park's still open.
Is there still a bowling alley in Polo Park?
Yeah, and the academy relocated to your other location.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
relocated, yeah.
And so you see them, but I can't think of a new one that's opened in.
And then the rec room by outlets is also.
You're saying that a lender would not touch the property if there is
No, I
an
said,
issue? Sorry,
no, some, I said some lenders
Some
would stay,
lenders
would
would-
stay away from it.
would stay away.
This actually started with a lender. This is why we had.
Questioning.
Yeah, this is why we had to do all that, because the lender required much deeper investigation than our prior lender. That's what happened.
And so are you saying that some lenders would stay completely away from financing the property
Or-
because of that issue that has been determined? It's not that there is a question about whether it's been determined. It has been determined that there is an issue. It's unknown what
They
the
would-
cost of
they may not-
remediation is.
They may not completely stay away, but they would raise, you know, your interest rate or shorten a term or something like that.
Ah, okay.
But some would, some could stay away, yeah, certainly.
Okay, you've chosen the cap rate of 7.5.
Yes.
Previous properties, you were saying 8. This one has the potential issue because of that contamination, which perhaps arguably goes for a higher cap rate. What is the attraction of this property that would counterbalance?
So the different, its alignment is a little bit better than the Rutland, and then the visibility off of Henderson is better. So it's not a great mall, but we recognize, I mean, we want to be, yeah.
It's got good, reasonably good visibility.
Exactly. It offers.
That's its strong suit?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
Yeah, maybe this, on your page 2, this property, yeah, it's exactly what area are we talking about where we got to level 1? Where exactly is
You
it?
see the little thing that says restaurant there on the top half of the page, kind of the top third?
It might help to start at the Tim Hortons, so the standalone restaurant, and then it's the end cap.
What I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, I'd like you to draw it out for me, because I want it right.
It's in the parking lot and it covers just under a bit of that
It's in
restaurant.
that area.
Exactly.
Okay, is it affecting anybody at this point in time that they have to leave the building or anything like that?
Actually, that testing is what they're doing next. They're doing air quality testing
Yeah.
next. Yes,
Has it affect any of the leases?
no,
No?
No.
I didn't think so. May not be relevant either, but if there is cost here, that would be up to Shindigo to do it, wouldn't, they wouldn't, he would have to do that, wouldn't he? So it wouldn't come out of the pockets of the renters.
They would, almost every tenant would say that was pre-existing to our lease and we're not paying for it,
Exactly.
is the general rule in
Yeah.
environmental, yeah.
Okay, that's good, thank you. Now, the last one?
Mr. Lubin, I guess you're after, I guess, looking at the hard copy, you've changed that, and so instead of 9,810,000, you're
Yes.
at 9,472,000.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Say that again, 9 million?
472.
Oh,
want to look at one figure, okay? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Mr. Taylor, summary if you so desire.
Like,
So here, I mean, we've got a property that we were here 2 years ago that was assessed at 86.59. We're looking for a reasonable increase in that, and, you know, with what the assessor's asking for is a 32% increase, and frankly, we don't think that that's warranted for the reasons that we went through in the hearing.
All right. Thank you. We'll do Q8, and then I think after that, we'll probably take a break for lunch
Okay.
and then reconvene, so we'll figure out how long we want to take the lunch. Okay. Mr. Taylor, take us through Q8, 817.
so file number 19-1998 is for roll number 140215666500, 817 Q8 Street. Proposed 2020 assessed value is $8,318,000. 3 buildings on site, built between 1995 and 2001. Essentially, we have a Sobeys, an A&W, and a Shoppers Drug Mart here. Plan area being 41,530, and the leasable area being 44,226. We'll get into that later. Land to building ratio being higher than typical at 5.7 to 1. And page 2 shows the reported vacancy at 0. It also shows the reported unrecovered expenses there, and their net operating income being right below $800,000. It also lists subject property leases as reported below, with the Sobeys being at $16 a square foot, the A&W at $62.45, and the Shoppers Drug Mart at $19.15. Rental comparables are on page 3, so we have rental comparables for fast food restaurants. They're ranging from $18 all the way to a high of $70 a square feet. Supermarket rental comparables ranging from $11 up to $17.25, and drugstores ranging from $21 to $24 a square foot. Page 4, everything's valued as neighborhood shopping centers, so there really shouldn't be any surprises or shocking things in the income valuation portion with the allowances for cap rate there being 7.3% again. So to lead you through the premises, we have 5 premises there. So the first one, 30,796, is the main floor of the Sobeys. The model is given a rent of $12.28 a square foot. The Sobeys also has a mezzanine space as well, which is the 1,855 at 570 a square foot, modeled again. And then the restaurant preceding chain would be the A&W at the 2,260, the model rent of 3,316, which is comparable to what we've seen in rent comps and in other rents we've seen through the city for fast food. And then finally, we have the Rexall there. The 8,560 is given a model rent of 2,230, which is above the actual rent received, but in line with the comparable rents you saw on the previous page. So flipping over to page 7, we see some aerial photographs of the subject property there. The Shoppers there on the corner, fronting Keewatin, as well as the A&W and the Sobeys store located to the back. The following pages after that, I request an inspection as the Sobeys is still paying their full lease rent. They renewed their lease and closed the store, but still use it for storage. Still have all the lights and the heat on when we went for the site inspection on pages 8 through 9. So there's, again, you just see different rackings, all still there. I toured the facility with Sobeys rep, again, and someone from Shinnecoe. They still have their security cameras, everything on. Yeah, everything looked to be in good working order. Pages 10 through 13 were the income and expense statements from 2017, again, which just support what we've already looked at on page 2. After that, we see the sublease for the Sobeys space. From my conversations with the applicant, I believe they have been looking to sublease the space with Sobeys. The contingency on that, and the reason they're having issues, I guess, today, is they can't release it to a grocery store, so Sobeys will pay the rent until they can release it to somebody who's not a competitor, essentially. So, you can also see on page 17, I mentioned it briefly before, with land building ratio of 5.7 to 1, you have potential for developing pad sites on site, being that's at the corner of Keewatin and Burrows, good location for pad sites to be built there as well. And we see on page 17, they're advertising for pad site development right at that corner. After that, it's just the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the assessor?
Thank you. Page 2, the expenses once again are purely just are they just
Sure.
those?
As reported of what your unrecovered expenses were on the mailer.
Okay, so nothing for the non-recovered operating expenses is included?
The difference in the math?
Yes.
Again, most of your statements say year to date, so I don't know if you recovered them later on in the year. I'm just reporting them in my brief here as you guys reported them.
I don't really have a argument with the rents, other than that the comparables, most of them are very old, for the fast food restaurant and for, the fast food, there's a couple locations in downtown office buildings which wouldn't be comparable. I don't have a large issue with the rents used by the assessor, so I'm going to go forward on that. Do you know when the Sobeys closed their doors?
I believe it was 2016.
Okay. Would that make a difference to a property if it's sitting with the anchor tenant dark?
Well, the anchor tenant is there in a different capacity. I don't agree when you call it dark, because that infers the building is vacant. They're still upkeeping the space. As to what they told me on site, they're still cutting the grass, plowing the snow, they're taking care of all that stuff.
Does the dark tenant draw any customers?
No, there's no customers going to the store.
No customers. So would you agree that fewer customers would be visiting the property in general? Do you think the same amount of customers are visiting the Shoppers and the A&W as when there was a Sobeys operating there?
Not the same, no.
And would that change the value? Would an investor see that as an effect on the value?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. On page 17, you referred to a pad site.
Yep.
This property's been there since 1995, and has that ever been developed, that pad site?
We're not assessing for a pad site. I said you guys are advertising.
Right.
Are you disputing that?
No, I'm just, I think you're saying it because you're suggesting that there's some value there, but I don't know that there's any value there.
I'm suggesting it based on what I said before with the land building ratio being really high, and also that you guys are advertising for it. I have not given any additional land value to that space.
Okay.
I could, but we're not doing that today.
Right.
So you're aware that, you know, we were here last year and the assessment was 6,262,000?
I wasn't here last year, no.
Collectively as our or respective organizations that went through this for the 2018 assessment?
I'm guessing you guys appealed it for 2018.
And so, do you think that this property's value increased 33% in 2 years?
Do I think it increased?
By 33%?
You're asking me to compare assessments?
I'm asking you to, did
Compare
this,
values.
yeah, this property,
Nice.
I would say I disagree with that. The assessment before, I disagree with the assessment as it is now too.
sorry, what do you disagree with?
Well, A, you're asking me to compare assessments, and I don't agree with the old assessment, and I'm saying I don't agree with the current assessed value either.
What do you think the current assessed value should be?
Well, you reported NOI, whether we're looking at be putting that difference in or not, the city is still well under in terms of what the rent and income is received on this property.
So you think it went up more than 33% since the board decided on the value in 2018?
Justin, I think he's here to defend the city's position, and I don't think you're gonna probably get an answer other than he is defending the 8.3.
Fair enough.
Nothing further.
Okay. Anything further?
No.
Mr. Borowski?
On your subject property leases, lease term 25 years, 5 years. They're not currently in a 25, based on previous discussion.
Mhm.
Am I to understand that they're not in a 25-year lease at this point? You said something about that was renewed.
They had an option to renew when they closed the store in 2016, and they renewed that, activated that option to
Okay.
keep care and control of the space, and they're still paying the full amount.
For what period of time?
I believe they're there till 2021. So well past reference date.
But that was done in 2016, they signed it out. And the A&W?
I believe their full lease is up this year. I don't know if they renewed or not, that's post-reference.
So that was a 25-year lease, and they're still within it. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
I thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I don't know whether I can ask this, because you're showing, maybe I shouldn't. The reference back to 18 assessment, whether it's there or there, could I go back and ask what the cap rate was used for that figure in 2018? Is it
I'm not
appropriate or
sure.
not?
I believe that back then too, it was split up. There was one for the A&W, one for the shoppers, and one for the.
All different.
They were all different, so it would have been a blended three-way cap rate.
Okay, I'll leave it.
The floor is yours.
Page one, you'll see, in addition to the assessor's photos, this is what the Sobeys looks like, and attracting no customers to the site, and notwithstanding it is paying the rent, it is not acting as a true anchor tenant. So this property is no longer grocery anchored. We talked about this assessment. Page two. We use rents of $667,000, about the same as similar to the assessor used. Vacancy of 4%, a shortfall of 8, the non-recoverable of 5 and 2, and we used a cap rate of 10%, which we'll get into. Page 3 has comparable rents for this property, similar sizes in the 30,000 square foot range, and we don't have any Shoppers per se comps because the Shoppers is no longer a prototype size, so we used some Dollarama rents that would be a similar size. There isn't really much of an issue with the rents, but the comparables still support the rents used. The Sobeys rent of $12, and it's slightly higher in the assessor's brief. When and if this ever gets released, it's not gonna lease for the same as a grocery anchored, as a grocery use. We've been trying since 2016 to rent this location, but the tenant doesn't want to put in any groceries. So we're trying to lease it to anything else, and we've had no success. We are leasing it. The tenant has another agent, and agents across Canada have all been made aware of this property, and it won't lease. It hasn't been leasing. The rents will be not at $12 if it does release, maybe $9. Vacancy of 4% is in agreement with the assessor. And the non-recoverable analysis, again, we are also including the non-recoverable portion of recoverable expenses, which are not included in the assessor's values. So 2015, it was 6%, 2016, 13%, 2017, 7%. And then the cap rate at 10 is going to be explained by Justin, but it's obvious.
It's risk again, right? We've got a property that is almost entirely occupied by one tenant who is actively trying to make the site worth less. We said to them, can we do discount grocery here? Could we do an Asian grocery? Could we do anything that would make sense with the space? And they've said, no, we don't want a competitor, because they have, right, Sobeys and Safeway are the same company. They've got a Safeway across the street. Their view of this site is they're paying rent to protect the value of their grocery store across the street, and are willing to ruin the value of our property to do it. So if you were buying the center, you know that Sobeys is very likely not gonna wanna pay rent in 2021, but they have effectively managed to take this out of being the grocery store that people went to. If we were able to release it when they closed to somebody that could take it over and operate a grocery store, we might have had a chance, but now all the customers have left, and you've got a store that, maybe we get back in 2021, but really they accomplished what they wanted. They burned the site as a grocery store site. And so saying that, you're capping it based on income for that grocery store, based on grocery store comparables, then you have to apply a high capitalization rate, and that's where we've used 10% here. Because this isn't a neighborhood shopping center anymore. It's a big empty building that likely can't be used as a grocery store, a Shoppers Drug Mart, and an A&W that don't have the traffic that they used to have when they went there based on the grocery store.
The other situation with this type of store is the online internet shopping now. We're finding that bigger spaces are staying vacant much longer, and that the number of tenants to locate in these spaces is decreasing. People are closing because everybody's shopping online. People are actually shopping for groceries online, so that's also a concern. I'll take you to page 9, 10, 11, 12, anyways. I'll take you to page 9, and we'll see. These are articles in various real estate publications or in the newspaper that have indicated that the internet online shopping is a real risk. It's a real issue, and it's especially an issue for the larger big box type stores. And that's what we're faced with having a 30,000 square foot empty building. You've heard, I'm sure you've heard, every day there's a new type of store closing. We've had obviously the Target, which is a much larger space, but it's the trend, it's talking about the trend of what is happening, of what's closing. The other thing is, like I said, the internet grocery. So not only are grocery stores maybe will become fewer and far between because people are shopping online, so they just need distribution now. If we were to sell this, or we were to lease this location as a distribution where they just house their stuff and they send it out, deliver it out based on online shopping, it's not gonna lease for a grocery store rate. It's gonna lease for a distribution rate, which will be much lower.
And so we chose to account for that risk in the cap rate and not in attributing a lower market rent to the Sobeys. I mean, had we done the opposite and taken a 7% cap and a $5 rent for the space, it would have accomplished the same thing. But our view is, we have to account for that. This won't be a grocery store again somehow, and we did it at cap rate.
I'll just take you back to page 8 where it shows the board of revision order from the prior cycle. I would hope that the value arrived at the board was carefully looked at and determined at that time. I'm not sure why. I thought comparing assessments referred to comparing assessments of other properties. This is what the assessor said, or the board said was the value of the shopping center at that time. It's the value, not the assessment. I'm not sure what the difference is there. I think a property with a 30,000 square foot empty building is not normal, and it's got to be considered in the cap rate. That's all.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, questions on your page 2?
Yes. Yes.
So you're using the actual rent received for the shoppers at $19.58 for the total at $166,920.
Yes. It's
But then you're
correct.
using lower rents for the other two for what reason?
Okay, the Shoppers was a 2016 lease, so that's fairly market, I would say. The A&W lease was,
So it was, I was handling some of our renewal discussions that we had with A&W, and before the reference date, they said to us, we're paying $62.45, the grocery store is closed, either we have to move or you have to give us a break on rent. And so those were the discussions. What they told us, there's no traffic, right? The same issues we're saying is what A&W realized and was leveraging in the renewal discussions.
And
Clearly.
Sobeys re-signed at $16, but you're using 12? My argument is, you guys use your actuals on all the other properties we looked at today, that when we're looking at ones where we have actuals, you're using other ones.
yeah, it's not a normal property with a 30,000 empty building.
But you
So-
just said you're capturing that in the cap rate, which doesn't fall on any market report for cap rate at all, so.
Do you think 62 for an A&W just like this is, your comparables show that that's only paid in a office building downtown where there's a huge number of customers. Your comps, you used, I think, less than we did. So why are you
My
disputing my
question-
36?
I'm not
when
disputing
you used
it.
less?
I'm asking a question, why are you using actuals everywhere else, but not right now?
We're talking about this property. It doesn't matter what I used at my other properties, does it?
I'm asking about your evidence and why you use
I'm
different
using it
stuff.
because I don't think 62 is a market rent.
Okay. I agree that 62 is not a market rent, but I'm asking why you don't use market rents other places, but here,
Okay, the other
You're using
places may
leases
have
in
had more
place.
leases in 2016 or 2015, or,
exactly. You're using renewal rents in other places, and here we're not talking about renewal rents. Even if it was a 2016 renewal rent for Sobeys, you're using $12.
because I don't think it's market, I just told you, I don't think the 62 is market.
Yeah,
So
the-
that's why I didn't use it.
The other
Okay,
properties.
and then the
we used-
Sobeys too, again, same question, same principle.
I have evidence that shows that other grocery stores are $12, $11, $9. When it was operating, maybe it was worth $16. It's not operating anymore. It's empty.
But you're getting $16 is the point.
That's not the point.
That is the point. It's
I
fine.
don't think I can sell this shopping center with a rent at $16 on an empty building. Thing's not even an issue, we can't, I know that.
But you're getting $16.
Yeah, we are, I can't dispute that.
You're doing a partial market valuation, partial actual valuation, essentially.
No, I'm using, these are what I think are the market rents. It doesn't matter if they're actual or not, this is what I think are the market rents.
But you talked about actual, you talked about that the Shoppers is actually getting $19.50.
Yeah, I think that's the market rent.
And then the cap rate, Justin said before, he uses external documents for cap rates, this doesn't fall into me.
No, it's a unique like, this isn't the type of property that would trade at all. And so this, you wouldn't buy this property on an income stream. So,
So if it's unique, did you do any pro forma study or any kind of cap rate calculation or anything to justify your 10%?
to justify we think the market value is right. So really, we were doing, not dissimilar from what you did with the first property, working backwards and saying, and like I said, in our evidence, yeah, if we use a grocery store rent of $6 instead of 12, we could have a lower cap rate. So we think this is justifiable, this analysis, but really, if you've changed the inputs in other spots, you're getting to the point where that property is worth $5.8 million.
Yeah. And then the reported net operating income that I have on my page 12 is $752,938.66. Correct?
That's correct, yes,
But now with your new revised workup, you guys are looking for 581, 588?
yes.
That's my questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Boraski?
Just to make sure that I'm clear, on page 2, the rents that you have used, the dollars per square foot, 12.36, 19.50. Those are your estimations of appropriate market value, not the actuals.
Correct, yes. What happens to be actual, but yes.
Okay, and the actuals are how much?
16 for the Sobeys, 62 for the A&W.
And 1950.
Sorry, 1980, yes.
And the Sobeys, that one was renewed in 2016
Yeah,
at 16,
yes,
and it goes until 21.
yes.
And the fast food that's the one that began long, long ago,
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a 25, that was an actual 25-year lease.
okay?
And so that's up, like the expiry is post-reference.
Great. Thank you, that's all my question.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I have no questions.
Summation, either party?
It's a really hard one, and it's gonna be hard for you guys too, and it's been a hard property for us, so hopefully you take that into account.
Okay, we're going to adjourn and, is it okay, like 45 minutes, something like that? Is that,
Sure.
fine? Okay. Mr. Taylor? okay?
Yep.
Okay. So, how about if we meet at 1:45? 12:45?
Yeah.
12:45? Okay. Okay, we'll call the hearing back to order, and we'll go to McPhillip Street, 2211. Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
This file number 19-2017 is for roll number 1105-1773200, 2211 McCool Street. Proposed 2020 assessed value is $8,664,000. Actual effective years built in 1979 to 2004. Flipping over to page 2, we show the reported information again. Everything is done the same way for rental revenue. We show the vacancy increasing from 6.7% up to 12.5% in 2017. Along with the net operating incomes there. Subject property leases are at the bottom. I'm not sure, some of them seem oddly low, not zero, and some of these terms are missing. 4 just shows rental comparables in and around New Phillips area. And those range from a low of $15 up to a high of $40 a square foot. So now looking at page 5 here, so the mall-driven rents are, as you see there, are below. We do have some second floor area here. So you see the leasable area total of 53,433 is applied the standard. Again, we've gone over this all day. Same thing for neighborhood shopping center, so it's 4% for vacancy, $8 for shortfall, 2% for unrecovered expenses. And then the overall capitalization rate of 7.3%. Page 8 just has aerial photographs of the subject. You can see it just there, it's just south of Garden City Shopping Center there. And then we have pages 9 through 12 is the rent roll income expense questionnaire. And then we can see the Shindeco leasing brochure just on pages 13 through 16. And it's my understanding when I looked at the files for this this property, most of the vacancy occurs on the second floor, but I believe the applicant will fill us in on that when they present. That's everything I have from the presentation.
Thank you. Questions of the assessor?
That's just a couple questions. Once again, on page 2, the expenses are much more than the 2% that you would allowed.
I just wrote in the unrecovered expenses as they were reported.
Okay. On page 4, do you have any second floor comparables?
Nope.
On page 5, you used 4% vacancy. Do you think that maybe a higher vacancy would be warranted?
Yep.
With the residents? Okay.
And are you aware in October 2015 that this property was purchased for $5.45 million?
I took that out because I believe, so I'm not sure exactly how everything went, but you guys are the tenants for the Boston Pizza, correct?
No.
No, you don't, you're not the franchisees for that one, so I wasn't sure about that, so no, I didn't include it.
But if there was an arm's length transaction in October 2015 for $5.45 million, would that affect your evaluation?
I would have looked at it closer. I was under the impression that it was not bona fide sale.
Justin, could you give us that figure again?
5.45 million, October 2015.
Thank you.
That's all, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Boreski?
Just looking at the front page there, actually built 1979, effective is everything from 79 to 2004 for that property.
Everything's the same. Actually, your built and effective years matches.
Yes.
Not saying the same thing? Yeah.
Yep, yeah, I'm just wondering, so like nothing significant has happened since 2004, for the last 15 years?
Nothing significant? Nope. Nothing that we would change the effective year built on it, no.
Okay. And so that means that some portions of the property are still 1979, and some portions did get redone, and bringing it up to 2004? There's only some portions? Would that be correct?
Well, I believe the portion that was built in 2004, I'm not 100% sure on it at all. I believe that's the portion that has the Boston Pizza. That is,
I actually don't know.
Yeah.
The kiosk maybe? Yeah.
okay. Yeah. No, there's nothing, there's not been any major permits taken out on the property that we would undergo an effective year change.
That's all my questions.
I thank you. Mr. Stenning?
No, I'm fine, thank you very much.
Ms. Schindelman and gentlemen, your presentation.
Thank you. Page 2 was just established that the property was purchased in October 2015 for $5,450,000. The assessment in 2018 at hearing was $6,570,000, and it's increased 32% since that time to $8,664,000.
I'm sorry, I'm a little behind you, obviously. You're reading that somewhere?
Sorry, yeah, for my brief,
Oh, page 1?
Yeah, page 1.
Page 1.
My brief, yeah, sorry about that.
And just so it's in evidence, the purchase in October 2015 was an arm's length transaction. We bought it from an unaffiliated party.
If you look at page 9 of our brief, there is the sale information that was provided to the assessment department as required. Page 2 are the market rents used, slightly higher than the assessment department. We used a vacancy of 9%, as that's been the history and is still the case. At the property, it's, as it was indicated in the assessor's brief, I think going from 6 up to 12%. We've used 9, it's about the average. It's still at that point. We've used the same $8 shortfall and just a slightly adjusted cap rate of 7.5% for a value of $7,408,000. I think we can gloss over to just the non-recoverable analysis once again. The assessor is using the 2% that they've been using, and clearly the the non-recoverable expenses are much higher, as indicated as well on his brief and in ours. In 2016, they were 23%, in 2017, 58%.
And then for the capitalization rate here, I mean, we have an arm's length transaction where this property was purchased at a 9.11 cap in 2015. We have had some success in stabilizing the property, even though the second floor remains difficult. So, I mean, this is another one of our, we like malls that are what you call normal. This is another one that isn't a normal mall. It's got second floor office that shares parking with the retail, which makes it both a challenge to lease the office spaces because they want dedicated parking and we can't offer it, and makes it difficult for the retail space because then you've got people who are there all day parking in the best parking stalls, so it makes it difficult to do restaurants here. So we made a slight adjustment from the assessor's cap rate from 7.3 to 7.5 to account for that second floor space and the risk involved in holding it.
Page 11 of our brief is the 15-1 agreement on the value. Parties agree that the assessment is now revised, reflects the April 1, 2016 market value, as it says in the document, to $6,570,000. And page 12, 13 to financial statements provided to the city showing the shortfall. The shortfall primarily, there's some gross leases, there's a lot of vacancy, and that's the reason for the shortfall in this property. That's all.
I thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions of the applicant?
Is there an elevator for the second floor?
Yes.
Can you differentiate some of the spaces, because I wasn't able to gain access to some of these spaces, stairs. So we have 2 units that are vacant, or listed vacant on your page 2.
Yes.
You applied rents of $4 to both.
Yes.
What do they look like on the inside?
They're bad looking office space, like Class C, like they're built out, where they have office demising, but it's, you know, brown carpet, old walls that need painting, like they're bad office space.
I just see quite the range here, from $2.25 up to $15. I just don't know what, can you explain to me why there's such a range?
So really, the main reason is we've had trouble leasing almost all of this, and so the older rents that were negotiated before, and have been renewed in some cases, were gross rents that were then converted into net rents. And ultimately, you know, we've come to a decision that, you know, we would like to keep this at least half full, and so we've been trying to keep the tenants paying whatever they can.
So it's just kinda, you guys are getting whatever you can for some of these spaces, and the $4 applies the same as like if someone gives you $4, you'll take it on those spaces?
Exactly.
That's your logic behind it? So there's nothing to do with proximity in like the lease plan or anything?
No, and we've known for a while that Rosenbaum is an elderly lawyer that he's been planning on, he's been retiring for the last 3 or 4 years, and he's getting closer every month.
Okay, and then Asteroid and Garden Oaks,
Yeah, so Garden Oaks is a built-up dental clinic, and so when we took over the property, we had the opportunity to realize in some of the value of the improvements, so it really is different than the rest of the office there. It's a dental clinic where the landlord owns the improvements.
okay, and Asteroid is just office space?
It's
Yeah.
office, yeah.
Your page 8. So your cap rate analysis, the 9.11 for the sale price, can you comment on why it's that high?
Because it's not a great center, right? The second floor is a real challenge, and so when we took it over, we saw a little bit of opportunity to potentially reposition the asset with better management. So, and we're recognizing that it has improved since we bought it, but it sold at arm's length because it's not great.
Well, yeah, I heard you guys say that already. No, how did you guys get to that? Like, what rents did you use? What vacancy?
So when.
Curious of what you used to calculate it, because it's not included in your submission.
So we took, I mean, fundamentally, we took the NOI, like the actual NOI from 2014 and capped it.
Oh, you just took the reported NOI and capped it?
Not reported. So when we're talking about a 9/11 cap rate on the purchase, we're talking actual from 2014, is how we would have arrived at the 9.11.
Okay, did you apply any other, you just took the NOI, that's what I'm saying. You're not applying vacancy, you're not applying
So,
allowances?
but there was some vacancy in the center, right? So
Yeah.
we weren't stabilizing the value. We're saying that the actual purchase, based on actual NOI capped, was a 9.11 at the purchase.
That's after everything.
So, yeah, like the net operating income, right?
Did you guys get an appraisal done when you bought the place?
When we bought it,
Yeah.
like, to establish that price?
Yeah.
No.
And then you checked off, no, you guys didn't buy it for the net operating income, correct? On page 10?
Correct.
So you guys didn't have an appraisal done, you didn't buy it for the net operating income. Can I ask what you guys did buy it for then?
5.45 million.
Okay.
We have confidence in our ability to determine.
Turn it around.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borowski?
I think I heard you say that the rent is slightly higher than the city, that would be the 1345, is that
I'm talking about the
Right.
total rents.
total rent? The 1345 is a blended at the bottom of your
Oh, yes,
page 2, the bottom of the list.
yes.
And, but the city hasn't done a blended one, did you do the cities as?
I'm talking about
Blended rent.
total rent. Their total rent is $690,468, we're at $700.
Oh, I see, so
That's how-
that's the,
That's how I'm referring
okay,
to it,
okay.
yeah,
I was looking at it per square foot.
right.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I have no questions.
I just have one question. Like you say, there was a sale in 15, and as the assessor had mentioned, you calculated a cap rate for the subject. I would say that you did all the, probably the right things in regards to extracting a NOI, and you have a, so I'm just wondering if you did that cap rate in 2000, because the sale was 2015, yet your presentation is at the 7.5% cap rate. So why wouldn't you go to, maybe a 9?
So 4 years of professional management of our team, we think that the asset properly is a 7.5 cap now.
We've renewed some of the leases, that sort of thing, and things have been stabilized.
Yeah, the previous manager didn't do a great job of maintaining the asset long-term, and so since we've taken it over, we've engaged, and we renewed Boston Pizza, they did a renovation. We renewed Cambrian Credit Union, so we got it from a riskier proposition to now a slightly less risky.
When did you start the renovations there?
We would have started, so we would have planned them in 2016 and really started in earnest with the parking lot and facade in 2017. And Boston Pizza isn't us, so Boston Pizza does their own renovations, and those would have been 2017 or 2018.
Is it fair to ask how much?
It's fair, but I couldn't tell you.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's fine.
We did have actually a sewer break in around that time, and it was $70,000 to fix the sewer.
And you put a new roof on and did the parking lot?
Should rip?
Yeah, fire.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, summation if you want?
I just had one other question. So you guys didn't manage this property prior to the sale?
Correct.
So I'll make my expensive math question here, is you guys are on there until the purchase year of?
Yes.
Colliers managed it for the previous owner.
Okay. Yeah, no other summation points.
Okay. Summation if you want?
No, I think we covered
Okay.
it.
Good. We have an individual that has to get out of here soon, so we'll probably speed up things if at all, but we're running fine. So we'll go to Portage Avenue, which is 3421. Mr. Taylor, there's an issue in regards to the non-compliance, so maybe just talk about that for a minute.
I had conversations with Diane about that. On page 2, you can see the department hasn't received any information from the owner since 2009 on the subject property, so we're looking at 8 years of no information, and I've included page 8 through 11 is, the tracking, the envelope, and the blank mailer. It all corresponds with the same tracking number support that we had sent out the registered mail and got nothing back, and then it was signed for.
All right.
Just to clarify, that's not us.
So, yeah, we
We were managing.
but it is the same owner, so we don't have
Okay.
an argument against it, but it'll be better going forward.
Okay. And that's going to be your response to the non-compliance then?
Because unfortunately, we couldn't think of a great counter argument.
Okay. And any questions from the panel members?
No.
Okay.
So you're accepting the non-compliance?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think we have to have a little meeting or anything, so, do we? Okay. Under the rules then, you will present first.
Okay.
So it's allowed.
Right? Yeah, it's allowed. Oh, no, allowed.
Yes, it is
Okay,
allowed. Okay, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. You may proceed.
property is located on Portage Avenue, just in the Crestview area. It has a Portage Avenue address, but it's again sort of an L-shaped like some of the other properties we were looking at, and only the sort of the end of the property fronts on Portage Avenue. It doesn't have full Portage Avenue exposure. We have a number of month-to-month leases there and 3 vacant units at the reference date.
4?
4.
They're combined.
Oh, 2 are combined, yeah, that's right. Dollarama and Salvation Army occupy 2 oversized units that are very deep, they're 90 feet deep, and a regular, like we've talked about before, a regular depth of a unit is about 60 feet. So those present challenges for frontage and for demising. It's difficult to demise those. There's no direct left in from Portage Avenue, and it's more challenging for eastbound traffic to access the site. The property is in actually deplorable condition. It hasn't really been managed very well prior. Roof leaks are ongoing problem after problem, and there are 3 separate roof systems servicing the building. Most of the roof is a spray foam system that is very difficult to maintain and to identify leaks. The property has also experienced sewer backups, likely a result of the restaurants on the site. If grease traps aren't properly maintained, grease can get into the main line and clog it. There's some photos later on in the brief, but it's an old wooden facade on this property. The roof drains, some of them go directly onto the sidewalk and create icy trip hazards. And the only way to have the water drain elsewhere is to redevelop the facade and redo the roof. Vacancy and collection has always been a problem at this property. And the issues along with the condition of the building decreases the rents that can be achieved with this property and increases the risk of the investment. The assessments, it increased 19% in 2 years, but I guess there was never an appeal and there was never any information provided to the city. So I guess it's just model on model is what's happened here, the 1920 increase. Page 2. We have obtained the actual rents from the reference date, and it's included actually in our rebuttal. And I've used the actual rents in this workup. Vacancy is and has always been high at this property. We've used 10%. We've used the $8 shortfall and the non-recoverable of 5 and 2. And cap rate, we capped at 8% for the condition of the building. We'll go into that a little bit more later. The attached comparable rents are greater to or similar to the rents used in the market value. We have the same type, Salvation Army, Dollarama, and then basic similar types of restaurants, singletons, massage places, sushi places, and that sort of thing, which are all similar types of uses at this property. Page 5 shows what I was explaining about the frontage and the visibility of the property. Really, the 2 big tenants really don't have much visibility at all from Portage Avenue, and then the multi-tenant portion is facing the other street. The third vacancy, the 3220, is actually, I think it's listed as 2 separate ones, but has it actually been?
It's combined.
It's combined.
That cannot be combined.
It was combined into one. So there was 4, but it's really 3. The vacancy at the time of the reference date was actually 14.4%. We've used 10%. The 3,220 square foot that I was just referring to is particularly challenging, as it's the least desirable location in the mall and oversized for the kind of uses that can pay retail rent. The non-recoverable analysis, again, we've received information on the operating costs for 2015, 16, and 17, included in this small little table at the bottom. So they were 12.45%, 14.65%, 15.21%, and we've used the 5 and 2. The next pages show the photos of the shopping center. Unfortunately, the headings on the pictures are on the wrong pages, so I will just refer to them. And you'll see that on the first picture on page 7, it shows the wood above the entry doors that requires constant maintenance. The next picture is one of the vacant units, and it's not really ready to show or to lease without further investment. It's bare floor, bare walls, basically. The next vacancy, or that's the same vacancy, shows the washroom is just barely plumbed in there with the concrete floor. And the next picture is the canopy where it's missing plastic grates, and we've got some nests and things happening in there. It's an old fascia box, sign box on this property. The next page shows the disrepair on the wooden facade. That's been washed away by you can see the drain pipe that is circled there. And the next unit, vacant unit 9, that's the condition of it, how it was left, not ready to be leased. There's repointing required at the rear of the mall, and repointing required, you can see on all the concrete block. And again, a graffiti problem like some of the other malls in the Crestview area. More condition, the facade, the wooden slats are all decaying, and situation there. And then we get to the roof where there's 4 different roof systems and erosion happening there. As you can see, the strip mall is generally in poor condition. It requires a substantial investment to major components like the roof, sidewalks, facade, masonry walls, and electrical. 40% of the current tenants are on month-to-month leases, and a further 40% of the tenants' leases expire within 2 years of the reference date. That means approximately 80% of the property could be vacant or on month-to-month arrangements in the next 2 years. This is a huge risk for the property, especially considering the vacancy of the reference date is already 14.4%. The property has not increased by 19%, and we feel that the cap rate for this property using our rents and other parameters is 8%.
And interestingly, just the history of this property, it's actually owned by the same group that sold us 2211 McPhillips. And so this is the before professional management picture where the tenants are, that don't have leases or a month-to-month. The maintenance hasn't been done, a lot of investment is required. And so this is where you'd see that higher cap rate if it traded. In this case, he saw the job we did at 2211 McPhillips and said, actually, do it on my account instead of yours this time. So we're gonna get there, but this is firmly in the before.
That is the current condition.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
So you guys just recently started management of this property. What date was that on?
July 1st.
July 1st.
Give me that date again.
July 1, 2019.
And there was no attempt to send in the income expense stuff at any point?
The information from the landlord has also been trickling in.
Yes.
Yeah, so
yeah.
we need to.
Took over, but you guys didn't know any of this stuff until later on.
Exactly, we didn't get all the information on takeover.
I appreciate you including the actuals for the most part here. We don't know lease start dates or any of the other.
I have that in my rebuttal because I didn't have it at the time, but I have it now.
Yeah, or any of the expense information, we don't have any of that stuff to go off of, so,
Yeah, I just have that one little table, that's what we got in my brief.
and again, for the vacant spaces, you're using $16 for all those.
Right, in and around
around
I
16.
think that's probably high, actually.
Yeah, for sure, on the 32.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
Seem to be running out of questions.
Mr. Stenning?
So the property was taken over by Shindico at the date you gave me?
Just for management, not ownership.
Do they own the property or is
Same,
it?
same owner.
The original owner owns the property, we're just managing it.
Okay. When were these pictures taken? Did you tell me that?
Around the takeover date of July 1
When they took it over? Are they all done now?
is what all that.
Are the repairs all done now?
Oh, no,
No,
nothing's
okay,
done.
I think you said that.
Nothing's done.
No, that's fine, that's all I have.
Okay. Just one question. You're using a 8% cap rate. Would you consider using a higher rate at the time?
Based on the rents that we're getting, and there's no second floor office here, you know, it could be a good mall with some TLC, you know, and Portage Avenue's a good street. So we think 8 is the right amount, and frankly, we hope to get that cap rate down.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a rebuttal, did you say, or not?
We've
Well,
rebuttal to,
Okay,
Well,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
You need the file number, roll number, or anything?
Roll number.
Roll number? So the roll number is 0721980200, and the proposed 2020, I guess 2021 value would be 9,894,000. Kind of gone over it, 13 unit strip mall. We have it, so it's over 40,000 square foot, so it's kind of too large to be a strip mall. Not big enough to be a neighborhood shopping center, but we're leaving it at neighborhood shopping. Rental comparables, since we don't know the actuals, are on page 3. And those range from $15 up to $23 a square foot. Again, trying to stick in a similar area, Gordon, Grant, Portage Avenue for those there. Page 4, you can see the model-driven rents, and then the exact same parameters for neighborhood shopping centers. So go over it again: 4% for vacancy, unrecovered expenses is 2%, shortfall is $8 a square foot, and capitalization rate is 7.3%, which again falls into the 80th percentile. Page 7 just shows aerial photographs that show it on the corner of Portage and Cavalier. Lots of access points to get into this strip / shopping center. Yeah, and then I have the post-reference leasing brochure from the appellant, or from the management company Shindico. Just shows some of the tenants, I guess, that are in place: Singleton, Pizza Hut, Thrift Store, the Dollarama, Credit Union. Page 14 just shows the site plan. The site plan there. Yeah, so there's the 4 or 3 units, if you want to look at it that way, available. And the other one's proximities in the strip mall. And then the addendum after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the assessor?
Sure. Did you have a chance to go see this one?
Yeah, some of the units I went through, yeah.
Yeah. So after seeing it, do you still feel some of your comparables on page 3 are comparable?
I mean, some, like, you have the Dollarama there, they generally look more or less the same. Some of them aren't comparable though, but, I mean, some of the comparables I've used here too, just, they're larger centers, like we've already gone over your points on 2025 Gordon and 3900 Grant. Those are larger centers, they're not strip malls, they're also listed as neighborhood shopping centers. So again, when the model's picking up and if we've labeled everything as neighborhood shopping center, it's pulling all these rents in. So.
Right. And you'd agree that most of your comps are all anchored mostly with grocery or, you know, that type of,
Well,
or lots of them are?
lots of them have grocery, yeah. I don't know, used Tim's as an anchor before, so I don't, yeah, for me, anchor is usually grocery store.
No, I mean, you're right. I use that term loosely for Tim's,
Yeah,
but it's always lined up.
yeah.
Okay, on page 4, your qualification for the second space there, the 3748 square foot space, that's the Pizza Hut, and it's under a chain freestanding.
Yep.
Would you change that rent if it was an inline?
If I had, yeah, well, I would definitely put it as an inline, lower than 3180. To what I would put it at, I didn't know any of the actual information. And it actually hadn't been in until I visited for this appeal, so.
Right, okay. I appreciate that you didn't have any rental information, but you did visit it, and you did see that it's in pretty bad shape.
Well, I didn't have access to the vacant units.
Oh, right. But the property itself, though?
The property itself, yeah, I mean, it's still strip mall. I mean, still occupiable, the units I walked through. The ceilings weren't falling down and the floor wasn't heaving.
It's close, though. The facade is close to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're downstairs.
And I do have a bit of rebuttal. It's it'll be quick, and then it's just a bit.
All right, you might as well submit it now. Yep.
It's more of the same, but it's just, again, it's just a visual of showing that this property is not gonna be able to achieve the rents that are used in the assessor's income approach, just because they're not comparable to the rents that they're comparing to. So we can just quickly go through them. You've seen them before. 3900 Grant has all the anchors, Shoppers, Safeway, Liquor Mart, that sort of thing. Same with 2025 Gordon, Safeway, Shoppers, Gas Bar, all drive rents up. They're just not going to be comparable. 1887 Portage has a Family Foods, has a Tim's and a Domo, and 1600 Nest, Safeway, Liquor Mart, and then the full office building as well. For traffic, 3300 Portage, again, is a huge mall, Princess Auto, Shades, Rexall, Banks, Tim's, Gas, that sort of thing. So I would say that the next page, page 6, 2549 Portage, is a Liquor Mart, Anchor, and 3421 Portage is just not at all like these, and it's just not gonna achieve the rents that are, these are used as comparables. Page 7 is just a blank. Page 8 is a document we got from the owners showing the rents which were used in our brief. And then page 9, we finally got of the lease start dates. The information again is coming in very slowly. It's just for information, it's not that, just because they don't have anything.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions?
Yeah, so units 9 through 11, I guess we'll pause unit 4 first. How long has that been vacant since? Usually it says on the rent roll.
Sorry, I'm sorry, what did you ask?
When was unit 4 vacant since?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yes or no? And same question for 9 through 11?
We don't know. 10 and 11 is the one that's combined.
10 and 11 is one combined, okay. And then rent roll, most of these are older leases with the exception of Salvation Army.
Correct.
That's it for my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Boreski, any questions in regards to the assessors?
None.
None. Mr. Stenning?
None.
Summation, if you so desire.
So I like my line about this being before so much, I figure reiterating it now would be appropriate. But otherwise, yeah, we think our responses stand for themselves.
And just one other thing is, keeping in mind that this has not been appealed or looked at by anybody in probably 10 years. I think it seems reasonable that maybe the value is not the right value as it stands right now, and that it needs to be adjusted.
Before you conclude, Mr. Taylor,
Yeah.
any consideration in regards to the poor condition of the subject property? In
Um,
regards to cap rate?
In regards to cap rate,
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it's all model driven, but after, your inspection, after looking at the pictures and after,
there are discussions on the roof repairs
Yeah.
and facade, like the front to update it, make it look more modern.
graffiti.
Graffiti in the back is what you guys said. So yeah, I didn't see any in the front.
It's kind of between the columns on the facade,
Oh, okay.
on the wood.
I mean, my point on, if you're looking at my page 1, I wouldn't agree that the effective year built was 1995. It looks like a 1980s strip mall that you would see all over the city. Again, and it's kind of tough to classify right now between a strip mall and neighborhood shopping. Whether I would adjust it over 7.3%, I mean, seems like, I don't think they've agreed with any of our cap rates today. At the 80th percentile, so, I mean, if it was classified as a strip mall, it would be, yeah, it'd be higher than the 7.05. But again, it's 1985 strip.
Okay. I think we'll go to the last property on the docket, which is Susan Ness Avenue, 2359. Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
All right, so file number 19-1992 is roll number 0708119170, 2359 Ness Avenue. The proposed 2020 assessed value is $6,593,000. We have 3 buildings on site, again labeled as a neighborhood shopping center. 29,000 square feet, 11 units here. There's been some renovations that we've adjusted the effective year build up to 1990 to 2005, from 1974 to 1995, which was the original date on it. We do again, once again, have a larger land to building ratio of 5.23 to 1. You can see that's used in the configurations of the building. Page 2, subject property leases, for some reason it didn't come up when I put it in, but the income and expense questionnaire information as reported. So we see the vacancy ranges over the last 3 years range from 3 to 0 to 8% again in 2017. The unrecovered expenses as reported, again calculated the same way, range from $149 up to $22,000. So we can see though that the expenses and the reported NOIs are all right around $540,000. They're on the actuals and what's reported to the city. Page 3 just shows some rental comparables. I mean, we're looking at lots of the same comparables we've looked at all day. So 3900, 2025 Corden, lots of the other ones there that we've looked at. Again, range from $17 upwards of $26 a square foot. So page 4 shows our model-driven rent here. Rents for the subject property as a neighborhood shopping center. Again, all the parameters being exactly the same. For neighborhood shopping centers, so we see there that the rents range from the $15.32 a square foot up to $36.69 for the small McDonald's space that they have there. Page 7 just shows aerial photographs of the subject property. So on page 7 you can see that the McDonald's and the Max share the building itself. So it's not your traditional freestanding McDonald's, there's other locations in the city that are coming up similarly along West East and others where McDonald's is attached to a gas station or a convenience store. So it's not as uncommon as just this property. You can see that our tenants just from page 7. Pages 8 through 11 are the income expense questionnaire. Page 13 just shows the site plan. Keep in mind that the buggy bath car wash is on its own roll number. But we see, once again, that the McDonald's and the Circle K or Max, or whatever they want to be called, are on the one building. And then the other 2 buildings there, you see the tenants involved, and that the vacant space is just at the back of that Dollarama building there. I believe it used to be government offices. I feel like Diane and I have talked about this before, but it's similarly to the other properties where it's located at the rear and it's hard to get to. There is access along the back of the building and through the back, but for retail use, you wouldn't really want your store to have no frontage at all, so. That's what that one there. I mean, historically, I think it's just been used for office space. I don't know what it looks like now. I didn't have a chance to look at that. But yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Questions of the assessor?
Just a couple. On page 3, we've gone over these many times. I just have a question about, I mean, the city has all the revenue expense questionnaires. And so I'm
Sometimes.
just curious, what?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just curious why, for this mall located on Ness Avenue, why it doesn't come up with some better comps? Like, they're really not even close.
For the Porridge and Grant,
Sorry?
you mean the
Grant,
comparables that I've
Porridge.
used today here?
Yeah, like you have all the information. You can't find something on Ness, there's a million similar malls on Ness.
There's a million on
Wow,
Ness.
there's a lot of little
The
malls.
one I put on Ness is the one that you'd already put in your rebuttal last time, the Madison Square.
Yeah, that's not comparable, we know that.
Yeah, and then lots of the strip malls right on Ness you're talking about between Ferry and Route 90. Those ones, and like the little restaurants and stuff. Those ones generally don't have parking, and lots of those ones have frequent problems in reporting, so I
Okay,
can't really use it if we don't have it in our system.
all right.
And then the other one on Ness where it used to have the Safeway, which has been closed down, and that one they're demolishing the whole structure. I didn't use those because all those are old leases that the owner just let expire so they could demolish the whole shopping center and build an apartment building there, or condos, or whatever they're doing, so. That's it for Ness in my experience. I'm not sure if you've included other ones along Ness, but we can talk
Well,
about
it's
those later.
just a general question. On page 4 of your brief, I think, based on the reporting, the Dollarama is at $19 gross. Correct? In your brief, you have the rent roll.
Yep,
So it's $19 gross, and you've used $8 as the shortfall amount, which is, probably lower than the actual. I just don't have it in front of me, but maybe it's right. But you still used $15 for the Dollarama,
yep.
really, when the net of that is $12. That would make, or sorry, the net of that, yeah, is 12. Did I say that right?
19 minus 8 is 11.
11, sorry, $11.
Okay. Yeah, we used 15.
You, let's see. All right. On 1600 Ness, you're comparable on page 3, 1600 Ness.
Madison Square,
Yeah, what is that?
that's the liquor marts.
Okay. Do we have anything comparable at this property to the liquor mart?
You guys don't have a liquor mart, no, and your Dollarama isn't exactly the straightforward unit as you see in the site plan.
that some of the non-recoverable expenses are more than what you've listed, based on our explanation of how our financial statement works?
Yeah, going back to the same question, same points, yeah.
Yeah. That's good, thank you.
Justin, okay? Yep. Okay. Mr. Boraski?
Yeah, just a second.
Okay.
Did you say that this was originally built to be all office space?
No, I said that Hill unit at the back that's vacant in that site plan,
Oh,
I said that the last tenant I know of was office, there was a government office back there
ah,
that had rented it out. But that was years ago when I visited, when I first started with assessment, it was leased out to the government office.
and are the depths of these units typical for the types of use that are in there?
The depths of it,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are pretty narrow. I don't have the exact dimensions though, so I couldn't comment on them exactly.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I have no questions.
Okay. You've been to this mall, Mr. Taylor?
Couple times, yeah.
Okay. So you consider it a fairly nice mall, based on the pictures?
Fairly nice mall.
Yeah.
I'd say it's considered, I consider it, I don't know if I'd say nice. It's average.
Attractive?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
good enough, I guess.
Nothing run down or anything like that?
Not that I observed when I was there, no.
Okay. All right. I thank you. Ready for your presentation?
We have a little bit of rebuttal, it'll be quick.
Okay. Thank you. You look familiar?
It's familiar. Okay, we can go by quick, we don't even have to talk about the tenants, I think you all know which tenants are in these buildings. I just also included in this one the vehicles per day, showing just the traffic to the sites. In a lot of, in some cases, the vehicle traffic is just because it's a thoroughfare, and in some cases, it equates to actual customers coming to the store, and again, it depends on location. Bringing a Hundred Grand, 2025 Corden are really, that's really traffic going to the, likely to attend to the mall. I mean, I can't really say that, but it's not like it's as much of a thoroughfare. 1600 Ness, 1900 Fort. It's located, a minute away from Polo Park, so there would be a lot of traffic at this property, even though the 19 doesn't suggest that. 3647 footage, 49,000 vehicles, again, lots of traffic. And 3340 footage, 43,000. And 2529, 46,300. Subject site has 24,000, but Morey is a thoroughfare to the industrial park as well, and so that's more the traffic along Morey that is really mostly just driving to other locations. I just wanted to indicate that. Once again, traffic and anchors and that sort of thing drives up the rent, and that's not something that we have at this particular mall.
I thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions?
Done already. Question on page 2. Again, similar to like other ones, just noticing you're using the low end of the range, I guess, from your actual rents, you're using that for your vacant space.
Oh, we're just doing rebuttal.
Oh, we're just doing rebuttal?
Yes.
Yeah, no questions on rebuttal.
Mr. Boraski?
Not,
Mr. Stenning?
A minor one, with the rebuttal. You talk about vehicles, traffic flow. Do you ever take into consideration walk traffic that's in the area?
That's also a good thing to look at. I didn't in this case, but yes,
Yeah, you should look at that too.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Your presentation?
Okay, page one. This property has two buildings butting up to each other with a little breezeway in the middle. It's kind of a unique sort of situation. You can see on page 6, the shape of some of the spaces is really kind of odd. And again, it's not ideal, but we managed to get it at least that way. The back corner space, like the assessor said, has been office type space, and I think mostly it's been not-for-profit we've had in that location. And that we have the few deeper bays with the very narrow frontage along the other side. There's no rear loading on the western building, so that's a concern. Dollarama actually has to load through the front door. So that's very unideal, not ideal for that tenant, but, and again, that drives the rent down. This property, since I can remember, has always had a problem with neighborhood kids, vandalism, to the point where we've installed cameras all around the property. We've had police for a spell, we've had police visit, doing drive-bys, and we've also have security companies. Impact security, that we don't have to do this at very many other malls. This is really a problem here at this mall. Kids are destroying stucco, climbing onto the roof, breaking into cars and graffiti, and that drives up the expenses of this property. Because we have to add security, we have all the repairs, and that's what drives up the expenses. Again, vacancy has always been a problem, especially that back corner has been back and forth quite a few times. And this is all, sorry, I'm getting tired. That all these issues with the condition decreases the rents that can be achieved at this property and increases the risk as well. The assessment overview, 2018, $5,445,000. This was recommended by the assessor and confirmed by the Board of Revision. 2020, the increase of 21% to $6,593,000. We don't see the increase. We talked about the McDonald's is not freestanding, and it's not a typical prototype size. It's not ideal for them. The Dollarama, the rent at $12, it's a gross lease. It's a gross lease at $19, and the $12 is reasonable, and there's comparables to support that. Vacancy at 8%. We have a history of vacancy there for many years. 8% is about average for this property. And shortfall of $10, I already explained the reason for the higher shortfall is the additional expenses that we have there. And the cap rate and a slight increase at 7.5%. Here are the comparables. They're all in support of the rents used in the valuation. The rents used are somewhat higher, but these are similar tenants, similar uses, and are comparable. The section on page 5 is just referring to the non-recoverable costs, and a lot of that refers to the Dollarama and being on a gross lease. So those are the non-recoverables for the 3 years, $75,000 in 2015, $78,000 in 2016, and $80,000 in 2017. $12 is not just, the $12 used for the Dollaramas is just not because they took the total rent less the non-recoverable. I mean, the Dollaramas on page 4 support those rents. And keeping in mind the strange configuration of the Dollarama and the non-rear loading, that drives the rent down. So the Dollarama and the Salvation Army, similar spaces, similar sizes, $13, $14, and then there's one that's $15 gross rent. So the $12 is more than market, is more than conservative for the market for this property, for this space. There's the vacancy history, 8% and 19%. 8% is used in the valuation. I referred to the shortfall already, and the non-recoverable already, 13%, 13.9, 15.9, and 15%.
And in terms of the cap rates, we can say in 2018, the board ultimately agreed to a recommendation at 7.75. The reason we're coming in at 7.5 is my childhood work at Little Caesars was a tenant that was in danger of closing. We replaced them with a nail salon, so the product is slightly less risky. So we use the cap rate of 7.5 instead of 7.75 that we all agreed was the right cap rate 2 years ago.
And that is it.
Again, I just have the financial statements showing the non-recoverables and the expenses. But I mean, we've all seen how that's calculated, so that's fine. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Taylor, questions?
Just a couple. So the vacant units, going back to my question from 10 minutes ago, you guys use $12.
Yes,
Why?
why not? No, I'm just kidding.
You're figuring that's market based on,
Yeah, if you look at my comparables, there's 12s and 13s and 11s and 10s, and they're all around 1,000 feet or whatever. And the one vacant unit at the back, the 3848, that's a really difficult unit. So, we'd be really happy with $12 there. And the 1,600, again, comparables support the 12.
even though everywhere else in the strip you're getting much higher than that, you're using 12 still?
Yes, they're different spaces, they're different. I think the 1,600 has, I'm trying to think what space that is. Again, it's a little bit, it's kind of a different size compared to the rest of the property.
And it's bigger. I mean, the other spaces, nail salons want smaller space, tanning salons are the same type of thing, the hair salon, like it's the biggest of that strip other than the fitness, and the fitness is on the end cap.
Your page 5, when you're doing your non-recoverable costs, which EGI are you using? For 15, 16, 17?
I guess I didn't include that, did I? Or did I use? I have to calculate that 1 second. Looks like I used something a little bit smaller than, or a little bit higher than the effective gross income on page 2. I guess maybe I used the one from the financial statements. That's what I would have used. And I
For
guess,
each respective year?
yeah,
Okay.
I can quickly do that, so I didn't do it.
So essentially you're looking at 14%, 14%, and 15%, but then what you're asking for today is 19%.
I'm asking for 19%?
Yeah, if you're adding together your other expense, non-recoverable, like your 2, your 5, your shortfall on your vacancy collection allowances,
Yeah.
you come up with a total of 86,189, which,
Ooh, how do you get 86,000? I see 23 plus 14 plus 9,
plus your
586.
vacancy allowance.
Plus my
That's not,
vacancy allowance.
that's not recovered.
Isn't that on the UGI? Isn't that already on the UGI?
Yeah,
It's a different numerator.
I mean, the vacancy allowance is purely against the vacancy.
Okay.
Okay, so what am I asking for, 86? I'm at 75, well, it's pretty close. So,
Okay, that's my
I
question.
mean,
Mr.
it's
Chairman.
not 2%, right?
Yeah, collectively, I guess the city has 8%, which I've already acknowledged is lower than what you guys are getting. And then you guys are reporting 14, 14, 15, but then you're asking for 19, is my point. That's my question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Moreski?
You were talking about the vandalism being a significant cost. Has it been a deterrent in a leasing? People reluctant to go into the building because of vandalism?
It all kind of factors in, like the demographics here aren't great, and so that's why you kind of see these non-credit tenants taking the space, you know, we've got franchise gym, a nail salon, hair salon. We're not getting the kind of A tenants that you would get at a better center, so the vandalism is certainly part of that.
And the things that you have done to reduce vandalism, have they been effective?
They've been expensive, but reasonably effective.
And would you carry on with those, or is there some alternative course of action that wouldn't be as expensive and would?
We're always weighing in with our tenants to find out whether or not they're willing, because ultimately, a lot of the time, at least some of the tenants bear that cost. And so where we've got, you know, extra security, we're gonna talk to them and say, you know, have you found this to be effective? Do you think it's necessary because you're paying for it? So really, it's a collaborative process that we engage with our, because they're the ones on the ground there, knowing what's going on. So it's not us making that decision. We're just making that decision.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Stenning?
I've accumulated 23 questions, but I'm going to
23?
disperse with them and ask nothing at all.
All right. Mr. Taylor, summation?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, Diane, summation if you want.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is another one where we've seen a significant increase from what we all thought it was worth 2 years ago, and so we're, you know, curious as to how we arrived at a 21% increase here, and don't think, like, we think that our value is the right one.
All right. Thank you for coming this morning and this afternoon,
Thank you.
and results very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, thank you for your presentation.